Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Wrestling Chatter channel. My name is Kris Kloss with Xtreme Memories right here. Thanks for tuning in once again. Don't forget to like, to comment, give a thumbs up, and please subscribe and please share this video. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about everything today. XPW with us, the one and only Kid Chaos, the Rock Superstar Kaos, one half of the Santino Brothers, Joey Muñoz. Welcome and thanks for joining us, my friend.
Hey, Kris Kloss, how are you, man? I really appreciate you having me on today, man, to speak about some extreme memories.
That's right. Yeah. We got a lot of them, man. Let's get right into it. Let me ask you, sir. We're going to talk about what you're doing today, what you're involved with amidst all the COVID right now. But, you got that awesome school. Of course, everyone's seeing you online right now. We were talking a little bit before the show. I was just randomly looking at stuff generically pro wrestling, and here you pop up. So you're definitely making your presence known on the internet right now, which is awesome to see. And you have a lot to offer students, people with knowledge of professional wrestling. And you've been doing it for a long time, and that's what we're going to get into, because you and I go way back, starting within, let's say the mid-late 90s. But speaking of that, talk about a little bit getting into professional wrestling. How did you get into it? How old were you? Where was that? Where was your first break before XPW?
Man, I want to say I've been doing it 25 years. When did you start? You've been doing it longer. Am I correct?
I want to say it was like in the it was kind of through Slam. Now this is my question. Were you involved ever with Slammer's Wrestling Gym?
No, never, man. I always wanted to be involved with Slammer's Wrestling Gym. I mean, or EWF or any kind of wrestling, anything really, because when Supreme and I came up, we actually came up together, and it was back in 1994. I think it was August 11th, 1994, at this show called Aftershock 94. We had the big earthquake, I believe in 1994. So they named Dan Farron's wrestling company. Named his company Aftershock 94. I think it was called Golden State GSCW. Cal International, that's it. Okay. Cal International was his thing, and Hawk was going to be there. UFC champion Dan Farron was going to be there. And that was the hook for me, because at that time, all I knew about was NWA or WCW and WWF, and that was it. I had no clue about independent wrestling. And I even questioned, I asked Supreme, or I asked Lester, I said, hey, where's this show at? And he says, La Puente Hills Boys and Girls Club. And I really questioned, I said, why is there going to be wrestling at La Puente Hills Boys and Girls Club? Because I only knew about these arenas. That's all I knew about wrestling. Right. And then not only that, really, Hawk's going to be there? Like, get out of here. So that was the hook. But then Supreme wanted to go because he knew about this guy named Sabu. And Sabu, as he would explain it to me, would do moonsaults through tables and crash through the table. And I would say, wow, I have to see this. And I said, well, what does the guy do? And he goes, no, there's no guy laying on the table. I go, there's no guy laying on the table. He goes, no, he goes up after the match. He does a moonsault through the table. And I was just like, why? Why does he do this? Like, what is this about? And that's crazy to really think about today. Like Sabu didn't do tables, and he didn't go through like put people through tables to start. He would lay that table up and do a moonsault through it with nobody there, and crash through it with his knee. And so I was like, I got to see this, but I had no clue who Sabu was. Yeah. And he was wrestling a guy named Al Snow. Never heard of Al Snow, at all. And so, but I'm hooked, because we're going to go see Hawk and Dan Severn wrestle. And we watch some independent wrestling, and we see a lot of independent guys like Ebony Blade. I think it was Gemini Kid at the time, and Greg Regalado, and Jason Redondo. And so now the match comes. Dan Severn versus Hawk, and this thing was a stink fest, like a 3-minute. Yeah, it was like a 3-minute stink fest, and I was like, "What the fuck was that? Like that was terrible." and I couldn't understand why Hawk wasn't in the main event either. But I was like, that was terrible. But at least we got one more match. These two nobodies, I was like in my head, these two nobodies, Sabu and Al Snow are gonna wrestle. And these guys went out there and this 300 people, and they tore the house down. Like, I mean, the venue was livid. They were pissed off. They broke tables. They broke chairs. They pulled out ladders. They did like pretty much destroyed the venue. And I was hooked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like, I was like, this is incredible. And Supreme actually went with a guy who was Craze One. And he was like, hey, man, we're training next week. You guys want to come? And they actually asked Lester, they asked Supreme, does he want to come? I wasn't even in the equation. And so Supreme was like, hell yeah. So I was like,
what year are we talking? Still 94?
This was 94.
Okay.
And Supreme says, hey man, you want to go train wrestling? And you know me, I would have did anything that Supreme was doing. So like I always tell people, whether he was playing basketball or football or going to the comic book store or going to the movies, man, I wanted to be there. So it just so happens he loved wrestling so much. He loved Vader and the Road Warriors and Terry Bam Bam Gordy and all these guys. And so he wanted to go wrestle. And so I was like, hell yeah, let's go wrestle. Little did I know, being the smallest guy, that they were going to try all the fucking moves on me. You know what I mean? And we did that 1 week, and we kept doing that week after week after week. And Supreme had a camcorder, and he would film it. And we never had any intention of becoming pro wrestlers. Like that was like, well, that's for the pros. Like, we're just fucking around. We're going to the park or we're going to the gym and we're shooting hoops. We're not going to become NBA players. Like, you know what I mean? We're just shooting hoops because we love it. And that was my idea. We get to film it. It's cool. And we would get gear, and then we would have like cardboard cutout championship belts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we were doing that for about a year. And Craze One was like, hey man, I sent my tape in to get booked on a show. We were like, oh man, that's really cool, because he had wrestled on some shows before. So we were like, cool, man. Like maybe we can go with you to the show. You know, we were geeked out. Maybe we can go with you and watch you wrestle on the show. And he was like, yeah, man, I sent all of our stuff in. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But you know, why would they pick us? Like, we're not pros. Like, we're just fucking around, you know? And sure enough, comes back and he's like, hey man, they want us all in the Battle Royal. And I'm like, why the heck would they want us in the Battle Royal? We're not professional wrestlers. We're not pro wrestlers. Like, we're just messing around. And they're like, no, they want us on. So I'm nervous as heck, you know, not coming from a school, because that was always the question back in the day.
Right.
Who trained you? And I'd never had it. Craze One. Well, what school was it from? And, you know, never had a fucking answer. So there was always kind of like, you'd get shunned. Oh, who's this outsider coming in the back? You know? And so I always had that problem going into it. So, and when he wanted to be on a show, I just was totally like, we're not wrestlers. So we go to the show. We're going to be on the Battle Royal. Obviously, the Battle Royal was the main event. So my first show, I headlined, you know? But Supreme is we're at the Nickelodeon in Colton, California, where that's like a pizza parlor, and Supreme's in there, and he's drinking beers and he's eating pizza, and he says he gets a little like Kris Kloss would say, a little bit too much of the drinky drink, and he says, hey man, why don't you go ask the guy and see if we can get it in a match, singles, one-on-one. Because Supreme would always do a singles match every week. Even if we did 3 tag matches with everybody else, we would make sure to get our singles match in. And so once again, I'm thinking, man, no way. Like, we're not even pros. Like, why would they just throw us like in a match? And so he's like, no, man, go ask. So I go up to the guy, Thrashmaster, and I say, hey, man, you know, me and my uncle Supreme, you know, we've been having practice matches every week for a year, and we were wondering if we can get on, you know, get a singles match today. And he was like, yeah, sure. I don't see why not. And I'm blown away. Like, really? He said yes. Like, come on, get out of here. So I go back and tell Supreme, and he's got his feet kicked up. He's drinking beer, eating pizza. And I go, yeah, we're on first. And he kicks his feet down, like almost falls out of his chair. Like he couldn't believe it either. We're on first. And yeah, so that was July 7th, 1995.
Wow.
And at the Nickelodeon, Colton, California. And then they had shows every 2 weeks after. Right. And we would just jump on those shows. And just, it was incredible because it was like, we never expected anything like this, to wrestle in front of a crowd or anything like that. And, or even to fast forward, like we would start doing like indie shows in Tulare, in Bakersfield. And everybody would always give like these false promises, like, oh, you got Supreme and Chaos, you guys are gonna wrestle the New Rockers. What was it, Marty Jannetty and Al Snow? And and man, that was all bullshit. They would just say that to draw people in, and not until XPW and when XPW came, I was so skeptical at that point. I think I was in the business for 4 or 5 years, and you know, Rob Black, we're gonna bring who is it, Big Dick Dudley and all these guys in, and Shane Douglas, and it was like, yeah, right. I think by the time they brought in Shane Douglas was he in? No, he wasn't in early. No, he wasn't in early. No.
Nobody except for really just, it was like Big Dick Dudley, Missy Hyatt.
Oh, Missy Hyatt, yes.
I think Cronus was one of the early ones too, but that was in the Pitbulls. And that was pretty much it. It wasn't like major big name like a Shane Douglas. That was like, okay, not everybody knew the Pitbulls. Not everybody knew. Yeah, maybe Public Enemy is kind of on the verge of everyone knowing, but Shane Douglas was one of those guys where it's like when he threw that NWA title down, it was one of those moments in wrestling like, oh, wow, it was like a miniature NWO, Hogan turning or something to that effect, to where it was an impact to the business, and then we got him, and I think that was the difference maker of getting like an East Coast guy to come into our Fed that, okay, I guess business-wise this makes sense. But I think before we get into that, Joe, I wanted to ask you. So, but going back to like the indie days, you and I both got started in like, let's say, the early mid '90s. I mean, I was involved with Slammers, and I was trying to get in. They wanted to train me to be a wrestler, and I did do a couple of the things. That was a great introduction, because I don't know if you ever heard, like the Slammers wrestling ring was no give. It was like soft, like a little bit padded, but concrete. It was just like nothing. It was like a boxing ring. Felt like there was no spring in there. But I was like trying to become I just wanted to be a ring announcer at first. I like doing the Finkel's voice and all that stuff. So I wanted to be a ring announcer. And then, but one thing led to another. Then D kind of broke off, and then SECW was formed. And at that point in time, you guys were in UIWA. Is that correct? You and Lester were in the UIWA. So there were two separate, like, and again, folks, young kids, like independent wrestling, nothing like it is today. It was a novelty to have like indie shows, because you had the outlaw leagues way back in the day, and then the takeover of territories, and then the indies didn't really like kick into gear until later. And then, but so when we were doing like in the 90s, it was kind of this novelty thing. Like, wow, professional wrestling, like TV, WWF style professional wrestling is going to be in high school. This is going to be interesting. I got to see this, like, how is that going to play out? And then you go to these shows, and they were so fun, because it's like, we're in a high school gym, but they're playing out a pro wrestling show. Like, this is awesome. And so before XPW, there were kind of like two factions in SoCal. There was UIWA, United Independent Wrestling Association, I believe, and or Universal, whatever it was, Universal, and then there was SCCW, Southern California Championship Wrestling. I was with SCCW with Kevin and D and Pat, and then you were over in UIWA with Lester, yourself, and a few others, and once XPW is formed, they kind of cherry picked everybody from both those leagues. So I remember coming to a UIWA show a couple years before XPW, and that's when like I first seen you. And
I
I
want to say it was called Impact Zone Wrestling, IZW, and then.
Oh, okay.
And then it turned. I think Gary Key might have been running it, and then it turned into UIWA. But no, I was definitely there when it turned into UIWA. But yeah, I remember, and then totally back then it was like one of those things. Like if you wrestle for this person, you can't wrestle here, and you're not going to be invited, and you're not going to be liked if you go to the back. You know what I mean? And it totally was like that back in the day.
Now, it was. Yeah, I remember. I just went to the show, and I remember rumblings like, "Hey, man, yeah, you could say hi to this and that, but don't ask to go in the back. You're not going to want to be back there because, like, oh, you're with SECW, or I know you're just the announcer, but still, you're with them." And I remember I was just having fun in the crowd, just being that fan. And I remember Craze, he was like playing the heel, and I went for the high five. And then I took my hand away when he like went for the 5, and and it's still on footage. And he talked to me about that years later, like, man, Kloss, I know that was you, dude. And I remember that shit, dude. And then at one point, he was like talking to me, and he holds the rope open for me to come out of the crowd, and I just kind of went like that, like. And he was saying, "Bro, I wanted to kick your ass. I wanted you to come over that railing into the crowd, and I knew you were." But he's like, "But now we know each other." But I didn't know who you were back then, man. So yeah, I remember that. Like there was a little bit of friction. There was a turf war right there. So
yeah, I mean that's how it was, and that's how I was kind of talking about. Like when they were like, "Who trained you?" And so like I kind of was like in a no man's land, but we kind of got hooked up with also with Incredibly Strange Wrestling. And that was with Johnny Legend, and they would do shows at Moguls in Hollywood, a small bar. And I remember, man, I remember Chris Farley would be there at these shows, and I remember Jericho would come through and go to the back, and I couldn't believe why Jericho was there as he was on Nitro, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I guess just a thing, right? Like, I mean, to me, if it's my day off, I ain't going to wrestling. I'm not going to wrestling. Like, but I think that has a lot to do with like the wrestling school, especially like now. Oh, I'll go around a show. Give me around a show now. But when I had the wrestling school, it'd be like people invite me, come to the show, and I'd be like, the last thing I want to do is go see wrestling right now because we're doing it 5 days a week, sometimes 8 hours a day. But yeah, like that's totally how it was. Like guys would just we got to go into that Incredibly Strange Wrestling. That was cool. Impact Zone or UIWA, which was really good, man. Like I thought they really had their stuff together. I remember them being on Channel 5 News in the morning and stuff like that. Like I remember they really had their stuff together, and I just totally wanted to be part of that, be part of a good show,
I felt like looking back, and even at the time, even though I was SECW, I felt like you guys did have a better product. You guys were on local television as well. You guys were on local TV at one point. I don't know how long that lasted, but I remember it was like some UHF type channel back in those times. You guys had just some local little thing going.
I don't even remember that. I don't even remember them being on TV.
Yep, you guys were on, but I think it just didn't last. It was like maybe a couple months or maybe a few shows. Just paying for airtime type thing.
Remember that like every show in the mid to late 90s was a TV taping. Everything was a TV taping. We're taping this for TV. Yeah. And then I'd go and I'd go to Supreme and I'd say, really? And he was like, well, they're taping it and trying to go put it on somewhere on TV, but
Yep. So Joey, talk a little bit how, again, this is kind of how it was in SoCal. We went over this with Kevin, how, Rob was associated with Paul Heyman at this time, and then there was a splitting off, so Rob wanted to do his own thing, and he got actually one of our flyers, SCCW flyers, when we were doing street team stuff back in those times, and we were flyering cars at the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, now the Honda Center, and we were flyering cars for our upcoming SCCW show. And this is what we would do back then. We would go to, whether it was Staples Center wasn't there yet, so we would go to the Pond, the Forum, the LA Sports Arena, wherever there was a WWF, WCW, we would flyer that. Well, Rob Black happened to get one of our SECW flyers. He contacted Kevin, and the rest is history. So at that point, how did you get into XPW? How did you hear about it? Who did you contact? Who contacted you, etc.?
Well, like, so going back to Supreme and I not having a school to train at, we always had a hard time finding a ring. And we would go into instances where Christian Blood, our buddy Christian Blood, would
awesome worker.
Yeah,
I didn't really get to know him too well. He was a quiet guy, you know, and people knew that, respected that. But man, this guy was a talent, like a la Chris Benoit, Dynamite Kid. Like he was just that type of Eddie Guerrero. Like he had that great work ethic, and I was always kind of bummed that we didn't see more of him. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah. I trained with him for that time before we all debuted together. Mm-hmm. And man, he was a total package. Had the body, he looked like Owen Hart. You know what I mean? He looked like Owen Hart, and he had the look, had the moves and everything. And but he was always like, I guess I don't know. Like me and Supreme were kind of like, I don't know, standoffish with a lot of people. And Christian Blood was and Craze one. They were a tag team. And they were always like friends with everybody in the business somehow, some way. I know why Craze was, because he obviously was in longer than us, but Christian Blood just had that gift of gab, and he would go to rings and he would say, "Hey, come with me." And one in particular was at a bowling alley behind a restaurant of some sort, and there was a wrestling ring, and we got invited by Christian Blood, and you know, we got a chance to train, and it was like great. We didn't have a ceiling. We didn't have the ceiling stopping us. We got to jump off the top rope and everything. And so the next week, Supreme and I wanted to go again, and Christian Blood couldn't make it that time. And so we said, well, let's just go back. We met everybody. Let's just kind of see if we could use the ring. So we went back, and we could see the ring right there through a little window. And we're like, hey, man, we were here last week, and we just want to know if we can, you know, pay to use the ring again. And they were like, what ring? What are you talking about? We're like, the ring right there. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. What ring? And so that was like kind of the impression. We were like, geez, like, I guess we're not welcome here, bro. So fast forward to where Supreme kind of tells me, he goes, well, I guess this new company that's coming up is ran by a porn guy. And I go, really? I had no clue about it. You know, I really didn't give a fuck. I just loved wrestling. And he goes, but I guess apparently they're having tryouts, and I guess anybody can go. And so we were like, oh, fuck yeah. Like, that's a ring. We can go to a ring. Someone's actually inviting us to a ring, and we can use it. I'm 100% down. Let's go. And I think, like, obviously, you know, for the tryouts, totally wanted to go. But, you know, once again, kind of thinking like, I just want to go in and use a ring, you know. And I think everybody was skeptical about this porn guy gonna run some wrestling. And so we decided, okay, let's go to this tryout. And there was a bunch of guys there, a bunch of guys that never actually ended up being in XPW. And they were kind of like at least the way me and Supreme saw it, because we were outsiders in, right? A lot of guys came from Slammers and other places, and we were just like two guys that are still trying to learn this business 4 years in. And they, like, I guess Rob Black had us all wrestle, and everybody wrestled, and he came in, you know, and he just stood there, didn't say anything to anybody, and just kind of stood there as an intimidating figure. And it was just kind of like, hey, who's that guy? And Supreme would go, oh, that's the guy. You know what I mean? Oh, we really got to put out, you know. And then it came to a point where they were like, who wants to go through a table? And a lot of the guys were like, the guys that were workers, like me and Supreme, like, we didn't consider ourselves workers. We were just happy to be there.
This is what Rob meant, like, blurted that out, like, who wants to go through a table?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it was Rob talking to Kleinrock and saying, okay, well, who wants to go through a table? And during those 4 years of us coming up, Supreme and I, we loved ECW, and Supreme worked at Hollywood Center Studios, and so he was a labor guy. And so, like, if there was ever a broken table, they would have to throw it away. But before he would throw it away, he would say, hey, we could still use this. And so we would take it home, and we would use them at our matches in Colton and stuff like that. And they were always sometimes the ricketiest fucking tables in the world. And so sometimes we'd have to halfway stand and lean on it so it wouldn't break on us before the actual spot. And so Rob is saying, who wants to go through this fucking table? And man, our eyes light up like hell yeah. And we, you know, and everybody else that's like a worker, like, you know, came from a wrestling school, like, you know, and you're taught in these wrestling schools, like, and even in mine, like, hey man, know your worth and don't be just doing stuff to hurt yourself, protect your body. Me and Supreme were like, well, you guys are going to film it and you want us to go through the table. We don't have to provide the table. You're going to pay for it for us. It's brand new. We were all about it. And a lot of the guys stepped back, including Craze, like our buddy Craze. Like he kind of went with us and he was like, fuck no, you're not going to pay me. I'm not going to go through a fucking table. Then there's no crowd. Fuck all that. If there was a crowd,
that sounds like Craze, man. That sounds like Craze.
You know, and there was a lot of guys saying that. And hey, going into it now, fast forward to me now, knowing more, I probably wouldn't have went through it either. Hell no, go fuck yourself for a tryout. Here's a video of me going through a table. But Supreme and I were so geeked out that it was a brand new table and someone was going to film it. And we were like, hell yeah. And I think that was like what really made us stand out. And I know Homeless Jimmy was all about it too. Homeless Jimmy was all about it. But if you think about it, like Homeless Jimmy had a good spot in XPW too. So I think that table incident really kind of separated a lot of people for Rob Black at that time. And because he was like, these guys are down. And, you know, we were down. I don't know if we were down for XPW. We were just so geeked out that we could go through a table. And I think that's kind of, I mean, I think Supreme got a great spot right away. You know, me, I was Kid Chaos. Kind of, I mean, I had a good spot as far as I was concerned. I was on the show, you know. So I was just thankful to kind of be on this show. And then when you got there, everybody had a t-shirt, right? Today guys buy houses off their t-shirt sales, you know, but we were, at least I was just geeked out that everybody, I was like, oh, Phenomenal Phil's wearing his XPW shirt. Fuck yeah. I'm wearing my XPW shirt. Supreme, everybody was wearing their XPW shirt. And I was like, this looks really fucking cool because I've never seen anything like this in wrestling. And then not only that, I want to say the ring skirts had the XPW logo on it. Yep. And I thought that was pretty big time. There was an entrance wave. The cameras looked more professional than the average cameras that I was used to in front of. And man, like XPW was a hit, and they were at the Reseda Country Club. And I think off the bat, they drew like 700 people, you know? So,
right. No, it was close to 1,000. And this was at the time when wrestling was hot and people wanted to see. I remember like our first show, referee Jesse Hernandez was there, and I remember just remembering him from all the WWF house shows and all the Grunt the Wrestling, or I Like to Hurt People movie.
He was there as a fan, or just checking it out. Not a fan.
He came to go see it, and there were a lot of people like in the business that was like. It was like this new Hollywood movie that came out. Everyone from Hollywood came, and this was like everyone from the wrestling world came. I remember seeing him there and a few others that I recognized, like, whoa, this guy's coming to see our show, because we put up those TV commercials during Raw and all that, and like this was not done. And I was like, I remember recording Raw just to see our commercial, you know, and all this, and it was so different time for this to happen. And the Reseda Country Club was a big deal. It was people I know in music. I have friends that I do a spot now on the Fraser Smith show at KLOS, but not anymore, the wrestling spot after WWE pay-per-view. And I tell people there at the KLOS about the Reseda Country Club, and they're like, that's the most legendary venue.
Really?
We saw this guy here, like talking about music, you know? Like there were some legendary concerts. I was like, I wasn't that educated with it back then, but I knew that there was something special about the country club, and so nice. It was cool to do shows there, and it kept us by our home base, which was in Van Nuys, XPW's home offices. Now, tell me a little bit about, before we get into, like you were mentioning earlier about guys that came into XPW from, let's say, ECW or even WWE and WCW at the time. What was it like for you? And I, in a way, I took pride in it too, not being a wrestler, but taking pride in being one of the homegrown talents in XPW, because there was a gauge that kind of set people apart from each other. Like I was talking to Kevin when he was talking about that Shane Douglas promo. When Shane Douglas came into XPW and he cut that promo, and we're on television and everybody in wrestling knows who Shane Douglas is. and boom, he's in XPW. And then we were watching that in the office. I don't know if you remember this meeting, but we had a meeting like we did every Tuesday night for a while. We all sit there in the office. Everyone's fucking ragging each other, blah blah blah. But I remember.
Hey, Kloss, just to go back to those times right now, man. Those are some wild, crazy, unexpected. What's gonna happen next times?
Yeah, I mean, I can't explain it enough. Like I said, anybody I talk. You didn't know what to expect going into that office. The good, the bad, and the ugly, everything. You didn't know, but something was going to happen, dude. And it was like, man. I know, and we were all so young, dude, doing that, man. It was like you can't explain it to people that wasn't there. That night when Shane Douglas, the week after he debuted, and Rob, like Kevin was saying, he welled up. And we all had the lights out in his office. We were watching on the big screen his promo at the Palace in Hollywood. And I remember watching it like, wow, this feels big time. It feels big time. It's the big leagues. We're on television now. We're going to put this guy on our product that is kind of a hot name at that time in the business. But I do remember at that moment in time, under some breaths in the office of all the wrestlers watching, there were some groans because it was like, who the hell is this guy? We put in our hard work here locally. We're the West Coast's own company for the fans out here. And we're doing pretty darn good in these matches and even being involved in television storyline. Why in the world is this guy? Why do we need this guy here? And from a business standpoint, when I was looking at it, Shane Douglas, like, oh, this makes sense. And I remember hearing the groans, and then pretty much became aware of the fact, like, oh, there's going to be a little mixed reaction here. And there kind of was in the dressing room. And I think that a lot of that came, from my estimation, is like having pride in being homegrown talent. And maybe these guys were thinking like, hey, we're going to now take a back seat to these guys. What's going on here? What was it like to you taking pride in being the homegrown talent and elevating to the personality that you did become in XPW, because you had a lot of success as far as being one of the prominent players, not coming from a separate entity that was already established on television like an ECW, etc.
I like Rob. That's what I think that was really cool about XPW. Was that Rob Black would bring in all these guys. And, for the most part, I think when he brought in Big Dick Dudley, I think Big Dick Dudley went over on Damian Steele, or at least, beat him up at the end or whatever the case was. But for the most part, or at least with me and Supreme, like Rob Black would bring these guys in and really like push to put the local talent over, his guys over. You know what I mean? And I think that's what really helped elevate us. When I say us, like Supreme and Homeless Jimmy and myself and even Messiah, was that he would not only put us in the ring with, a Juventud Guerrera or even a Sabu or like Supreme and Axel Rotten. And so that would legitimize his local talent. And then he would put us over sometimes. And if not sometimes, most of the time, he would put us over. And I think that, like, that was just something that Rob Black really had, and he had a lot of pride in his homegrown talent. And I know what you're talking about, like with Shane Douglas coming in, as a wrestler. Obviously, I think as a promoter, me being a promoter now, like I totally like see the business aspect of it, but also I want my guys in the back to feel a little fire under their feet. I think that. Having those little grumblings, it really puts that competition out there in a world of professional wrestling where everything is predetermined. It puts that competition out there because you are now, there is another person on the roster, and he might not necessarily take your spot, but it could be a trickle effect to where you get pushed off the show. And I think
it helps steps your game up.
Oh yeah, it totally helps step your game up. I remember the first Deathmatch tournament. And like you said, every Tuesday night we'd go into Rob's office, and I remember looking on the board, and they had the entire tournament bracket out. And I looked on there and I was like, damn, I didn't make the cut. And so I guess, I don't know if I talked to Klein Rock or I remember ended up talking to Rob Black about it. But I was like, hey man, don't leave me off the show. Like I want to, they're like, you won't do a death match. And I'm like, well, hell yeah, I will. Like, I'm not a death match guy, but if that means I'm going to be on the show, I'll do a fucking death match. I'd rather do a death match than not to be on the fucking show.
Yeah.
And I remember, man, they were like, well, you better fucking bleed. And if you don't bleed, it's your ass and this, that, and the other. And I had never gigged before. And I was just like, Jesus Christ. Okay, well, and everyone would tell you, hey, when you gig, it's either going to go one of two ways. You're either going to get too much blood or not enough at all. And it's going to feel like you got too much. And I definitely think I didn't get enough at all, you know?
Wow. I remember
I
that.
guess, yeah, but I guess it was enough for him to for Rob Black to put me on the show and keep me on it, but I remember I had no intention of, I didn't care about death matches. I know Supreme loved them, but I just didn't want to be left off the show, and I think like kind of that aspect of it is what like really put Rob Black like to really like kind of like go to bat for his homegrown talent.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
And I remember an incident where I was wrestling Juventud Guerrera, and Rob Black wanted me to go over, and Juventud was not having it. He was not about it. I mean, he was coming right off of WCW,
yeah.
And at the time I wasn't even the Rock Superstar. I was just Kid Chaos still.
Chaos.
And he was not about it. You know, as a wrestler for myself, it made me feel like shit. But Rob Black was like going to bat with me. You know, he was going to bat for me, going to bat, and until finally Juventud was like, hey, fuck this. I'm talking to Sabu because this is not happening. I'm not going to let this indie guy go over on me. And Sabu was like, you know, hey, man, this doesn't make sense. This guy's he's not established. And, you know, everything Sabu said, like, really was breaking my heart. But I mean, it made sense, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't personal. It wasn't personal.
Yeah, no, it wasn't personal. And he totally kind of just shit on me, really, right in front of my face, you know, like kind of like you have to do. Like I do it, and I go back and tell my students, hey man, put my hand on their shoulder and say, hey, like it's in the middle of war, in the middle of a show. I might yell at you, but I'm not mad at you at all. You know what I mean? And I remember Sabu doing that, and Rob Black just really just trying to really go into bat for me. Like, no, he's not. Now that you guys want him to lose, I'm going to go to bat for him even more because I'm not going to let you tell me what to do. And then they find, I think cool. Tool didn't show up, and then we find up doing a 3-way. And I end up losing to Sabu, but he was the world champion at the time.
Right.
And he kicked me right in the fucking face, like kind of like honestly, like kind of F this guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then he went for the cover. Oh no. And then afterwards he goes in the back and he goes, hey man, I was telling Rob Black that you weren't ready, that you can't go, that you're really not that good of a wrestler. And then after we went, he goes, hey man, I just want to let you know that I was wrong. Like you can go. And all of a sudden, because Sabu is my favorite fucking wrestler, man. Like he's the guy that got me into it, like wanted to do it. And he's shitting on me in the back. Like, and this is war. Like this is like when they say, hey, don't meet your heroes because they're assholes. Your heroes. Yeah, and this is war, and my heart is sinking in the back. Like, oh, this guy, dude. Like I love him so much, but fuck him. I had that, right? We all had that XPW mentality. Like, hey, I might be a mark for you, but if you're gonna see that, hey, fuck you, man.
That was a big transition in a way. Those moments of like truly transitioning from the part of us that was a fan to the part of us that's working in the business.
Oh my god,
huge right there.
Like right, because you start seeing all these guys. Because me and Supreme are ECW marks. You know, everyone talks about the Heatwave incident and whatever, and we invaded ECW. But the truth is, fucking loved ECW, man. I mean, I'm pretty sure you did. Like, everybody wanted to wrestle for EC fucking W, you know? Yeah. And we had this opportunity with XPW that became, a rival, you know? And just so much pride. And, Kloss, like, I think about it today, like 20 years later, and I think about, like, honestly, 100%. Like, if I wasn't so like, I'll die for you, Donnie. I'll die for you, XPW. Yeah. Like if I wasn't such gung ho for XPW, my career would have been so much better to go to CZW or go to all these companies, but it was just so I think we all did. And I think it was kind of a known thing. Yeah, we had to have this loyalty. And if you didn't have this fucking loyalty, you weren't going to be in the end. And my choices were, well, I can go back to the Nickelodeon in Colton, California, but I guess I didn't understand at the time that I probably could have got booked a lot more places. You know, I guess I didn't understand that. I was like, if I let go of XPW, I'll have nothing. You know,
it's crazy. We had this mindset, as crazy as this might sound to people. It was like, well, let's see, what would I choose, XPW or if WWE offered me a position and I would be just another cog in the wheel over there, or do I want to put something that I really truly believe heart and soul in? I mean, it sounds ridiculous today, but this was the mindset of all of us, how much it was like our team. It was like a team in football. This was our team versus all these other teams. And that's what the locker room was. It was like we were one big football team, referee, announcer, whatever, and a wrestler, but we were all part of this team. And man, it was like all in, and I felt that too. And it was like a pride. It's like you said, wearing those XPW T-shirts. Like I would go out and wear those, and we get recognized, whatever. But it was more just because we really had this dedication to this product. And that's when I ask you, like, the homegrown talent. The reason I ask is because I know that there was such a pride in it. And people were, again, torn because you want to see this league succeed. But you're right. Rob had a good vision to infuse the ECW / outside talent with our talent. He wouldn't just like what a lot of promoters do. Okay, here's our talent. Now, if I get two guys from WWE, I'm just going to put them in a match together. No, Rob and Kevin had a long-term vision for not only the company, but for the homegrown talent. So he wouldn't just put them on the undercard. Like you and Hoovy, he would infuse these guys to come in. Or like when New Jack and Dynamite D went at it. New Jack could have gone against like Sabu or somebody.
Yeah.
Nope, he was in there against D. And then Sabu was against one of you guys, you know, like. So it made a lot of sense, and it felt like it was a great way to make our league feel like, okay, everybody I see on this television product is part of this XPW. So he utilized these guys to get the West Coast guys over without saying that that's what he was doing, which I thought was cool. You know?
And I tell my students today, and I sound like this bull fucking shitter, man. Like I really do. Like I tell them, I say, hey man, whoever you think is the hottest fucking indie guy right now, that was us in XPW. And they look at me like kind of like, oh, cool, coach. Like, yeah, like whatever. I couldn't go out without getting recognized in LA. You know what I mean? Like I could not go to a mall. I couldn't go anywhere with at least one person's like either. I used to have people that would just follow me around, never even come up to me and just say, hey man, I'm a fan. Like they would just weirdly follow me around. Like it was the weirdest fucking thing. And I think like people today, like you said, like they just cannot comprehend how you can even think about if WWE is calling, you're going to stay with XPW. Get the fuck out of here. But that was the truth. Kloss is
that was right. The mindset. That was the mindset, man.
The idea was that XPW was still going to be around today. Yeah, you know, that was the idea. And I think that if you don't go in with that belief, it ain't never going to fucking happen anyway.
Right.
You know, maybe it was a far pitch, but I constantly tell people today, like, hey, man, you can, like, if you want to be a wrestling company, how bad do you want it? Like, you can overtake the WWE one day. And they would look at me and just be like, get out of here. Like, Vince McMahon is a wrestling god. And I'm like, dude, he's just a fucking man. Like, you can fucking do it. Like, look at AEW is even competitioning them right now. Right. I would tell people going in, like, all I want is for Santino Brothers to be recognized the way Slammers was.
Right.
And I think we far past that, you know, but that was always the goal, to just kind of be recognized in Southern California the way Slammers was, you know, and I think like that was the mentality we had in XPW, that we are going to conquer, you know what I mean? And
we needed to have that, whether we did or not. That was a belief system that we all needed to carry in order for us to put on a product that was as successful as it was with television, with all this, you know, so that mindset. and it made working that much more fun and enjoyable because it wasn't just a job. It was our heart and soul was in that product, you know, and that was very important. Again, it made it more enjoyable. It made for a better experience, and it made for a better just life learning experience within this industry. Because I wouldn't have learned as much as I did had I not been as fondly dedicated to it. There's no way. It would have just been a job, and that was it, you know.
And you saw those guys come into XPW that were like, it's just a booking. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and you weren't gonna last if it was just a booking to you. Like you had to immerse yourself in the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You really did. Just to kind of be a part of it.
Right, and I think that's like in the early days how Rob, one of the ways he kind of siphoned people out, because I remember the year before we started, we signed, Kevin had us sign contracts, and then we would have one of our first few meetings, and it was like all these guys came into the office, and then like a week or two later, half those guys were just done. You didn't see them again. And Rob just made that decision, like just hearing people BS in the office, walking by, kind of hearing everybody, all right, get rid of that guy, get rid of that guy. Yeah, keep him, you know, that's fine. And people don't understand. There were a lot of people in there that were just like, you didn't know why they were gone, but that was just Rob's decision, and he got rid of them. And it was just his perception of what he thought they were all about, you know, which was maybe just like you said, just another wrestling show, or maybe just in it for themselves, and they weren't necessarily a team player, and they didn't have any dedication to it, but putting themselves over, whether it's in front of the camera or even behind the scenes, you know, and that was their biggest mistake, is to kind of talk about themselves, you know. And in an egotistical manner type thing. But let's get into a little bit, Joey, about your character from Colorado Springs, Colorado, the 23-year-old high-flying sensation, Kid Chaos. And it was funny. I remember you were the youngster, up-and-coming superstar in the ranks, squeaky clean. You know, babe, before I leave, I'm going to call my mom and tell her how, you know, I love her and all this stuff. And you know, make sure that, you know, drink a nice glass of warm milk before you go to bed, and all this great. But they build you as young as you were. They build you as a little bit older. I remember this, like the 23-year-old high-flying sensation, if I recall. And I remember them saying, like, yeah, you know, he's only what, 20? How old were you? 20?
I might have. Okay, so it was 1999. So if it was 1999, then I was 20 years old.
Yeah, so it was always weird to me. Like, well, you want this guy to be young, but you're billing him as like he's older. Like, why, man? But anyway, I remember that was your character, and I'll be honest. Like, personally, knowing you back then, I mean, of course, we weren't the characters we were on TV. Even myself, like I'm Kris Kloss, knows wrestling's a work, but Kris Kloss on XPW. Kris Kloss on XPW TV is a person that thinks this is all real. So we weren't the same person on television, but our personalities were such that there were some similarities. And you were, a lot of us were innocent back then. But I honestly, like at that time, I couldn't foresee you turning into the character of the Rock Superstar you did, or even becoming a heel. And there was a lot of evolution into that. But you had a great, like, straight up old school youngster fan favorite gimmick in the beginning as Kid Chaos. And just the name Kid, I think, helped in a way with your transition to Rock Superstar Kaos, because it was a little bit like with the same concept of a true face that you only believe as a face. Let's say Hulk Hogan, for example, like when he became NWO, like he was so good that you couldn't see him going heel, and you were so innocent young Kid Chaos to go heel. So that was a cool heel turn. But before we do get into that, this was at a time, let's say 99, 2000, talking about Shane Douglas coming in the Hollywood Palace. You too, you're a Cali dude like I am. Grew up out here. What did it mean to you for when XPW first hit the LA Sports Arena? How was that?
Man, you know, like that
One
was
of my favorite moments in all of XPW. So I like to ask that of everybody because to me it was just a beautiful, surreal moment. You know?
Yeah, I think the coolest thing is, and I think you see it in what was it, WrestleMania 7? Was it WrestleMania 7 that was there? And I
2
think,
and 7.
yeah, I think you see the orange guardrails that really stand out.
Oh, okay.
And when we went there, we had the orange guardrails, and I thought that
Okay,
was like
you're
really
actually,
cool.
not to cut you off, but they did use the WWE guardrails for
Oh,
7.
did they?
But at WrestleMania 2, because even WWF was in an old school state right then. In WrestleMania 2, they did use the LA Sports Arena's guardrails that we used in our show. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, man.
Now that you mention it.
I thought that was like the coolest thing, and you know, like up until SoFi Stadium has been built, like I actually had an opportunity to wrestle in every major arena in Southern California, from the Memorial Coliseum, the Sports Arena, the Forum, the Grand Olympic Auditorium, and the Reseda Country Club.
Yep.
But yeah, to go to the sports arena, I thought was just really the coolest thing in the world. My mom and dad actually used to work there.
Wow.
Yeah, they used to work there, and I remember they actually said they went to a concert, see Janet Jackson there. So just like kind of getting to the sports arena, like I just thought that was like really amazing and cool. Like actually walking in to a real arena, you know what I mean? Like that was probably one of the coolest feelings to have. And then not only that, but in Los Angeles, that like everyone's got a story. You know, and you could talk to anybody. Everybody's got a story about the sports arena, whether it be a concert or whatever. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, that was an awesome feeling.
Yeah, it did that in turn, being at the sports arena in the middle of the ring, knowing all the history of that place, had the enormity of it, and just physically in size, the sound of the ring and the echo throughout the arena. The whole experience of the sports arena, do you feel like that helped you personally step your game up? Like just that experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Because it did for me too, just as an announcer too. Like just being there, broadcasting from the LA Sports Arena. I remember thinking like, okay, this in many ways is the bigs right now, and it was so exciting. But it just naturally, I wanted to do that much better just by being in that venue. You know.
I think the sports arena was the first time that we had Sabu, if I'm not mistaken.
And Terry Funk.
Oh, and Terry Funk. And I remember just really thinking, I think we drew incredible. That was like a week after the heat wave then, huh?
Yeah, we actually did all right, and it was like the lower bowl we focused on, but nonetheless that lower bowl was just packed.
Yeah,
and it was this. It felt like the whole arena. If you watch the recent XFL games, like they had Seattle and St. Louis for those teams where tickets were sold extremely well, to the point where they said in St. Louis, Seattle, oh, we should have opened the upper bowl. But when that lower bowl was full, it felt like an NFL game. You had no idea that there was nobody up there on the upper bowl. And that's how we felt at the LA Sports Arena.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like it was like the noise level. It felt like that lower bowl just like was so deafening and loud, and it felt like the real deal. And in many ways it was. But for me, that was a great moment. It helped me, like I said again, step my game up. So, you know, going back to what you said, absolutely, that thing was full in there, and just wrestling. How was that? Like, how did that differentiate from your previous time in wrestling?
I want to say that was the day that I might have. I want to say we went there a couple of times, right?
Yeah, it was 2 or 3 shows we did there.
2 or 3 shows, but I remember, like, you know, one of the great memories I have there was wrestling Tracy Smothers.
That's right.
And I had wrestled, I guess, Steve Rosano in a I Quit match beforehand, and then the Black Army came in, and then I guess Tracy Smothers got a job as a trainer at WWE, and so he was leaving XPW, so which if it followed in, I guess I was going to be in this loser leaves XPW match with Tracy Smothers, and so we had just gotten done with the Rosano match, and so I just get to sit down with Tracy Smothers, and we're going to talk about the match, you know, and this is the first time I'm working with him, probably the first time we met him, to be honest with you. And they come to the back and they go, your music's playing. And we didn't even say one word to each other. And we were like, they were like, my music's playing. You got to go out there right now. And so we start walking up and like, I'm thinking we haven't said a word, and I'm young in the game. You know, if I had to do that now, it'd be no problem. You know, it'd be no fucking problem right now. But
sure.
I'm so young in the game. I'm like, what the fuck? And so Tracy Smothers turns around as we're walking down, right, the Goldberg aisle or whatever it is, and he turns around and just looks at me and just says, just trust me. And I'm like, all right, I'll just trust you, right? And I think he said, listen to me and trust me, right? And so we go out there, and I am just ears wide open, and I have never done a match like that. And we're at the sports arena, and I'm doing this no-called match with this veteran of the game, Tracy Smothers. And, man, he just basically picked me up, put me on his shoulders, and carried me through the entire match. Even in the middle of the match, he goes, what's your finish? In the middle of the match, he goes, what's your finish? And as a matter of fact, awesome. Josh Lazy had came back from Canada with Sabu. And apparently there was this guy that hooked on a kind of like a diamond cutter, and he would run up the ropes and do a whole moonsault, right? It's known as the sliced bread now. And so Josh Lazy was like, Chaos, you should do this fucking move. And this guy did this. And so Tracy Smothers happened to be in the ring, right? Because when Tracy Smothers first showed up, we actually all had to do a workout at the sports arena. We all had to run the ropes. And yeah, Rob Black had us working out for some reason. I think he thought guys were getting lazy or something. So yeah, we went through like an hour rigorous workout. And so some of the guys were in the ring afterwards, and so I was working on this move, this sliced bread move that Josh Lazy had stolen from a guy in Canada and gave to me. And so I tell Tracy Smothers, hey, man, because there was no name for it at the time. I said, hey, man, that move that I was working on earlier, and Tracy wasn't even in the ring. He was just right outside the ring watching us. And so he's like, okay, bro, I'll do it. He didn't say bro, but he was like, okay, man, that's the move. So we go to hit it, and it's a little off. It's the first time, like probably the third time that I'm trying it, first time he's doing it. And I barely get over, hit the move, hit the finish, go home 1, 2, 3. And a funny story about that is that he goes, right, loser leaves XPW. So he carries me through this incredible match at the sports arena, and then he ends up getting a job at WWE, right? And fast forward, Brian Kendrick trains at our school. He has his own class. He trains at our school. And I asked him, out of curiosity, because you started doing this move called the sliced bread, and I never seen it before I would do it. But I know I didn't invent it because it was stolen from some guy in Canada. And I asked him, where did you get this move from? Like, where did you come up with it? He goes, oh, man, Tracy Smothers gave it to me.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
Yes, because Tracy Smothers gave him the move. And so I told him the story about when I did it with Tracy Smothers. And I just thought it was a really cool story because it became the sliced bread #2 world famous move. Because Brian Kendrick would do it, but it came from me doing it to Tracy Smothers in XPW, and then him going and becoming a trainer and giving it to Brian Kendrick. And I just thought it was really awesome. That was my sports arena story.
I think Tracy Smothers is a name that, I mean, he's gotten his due, but I don't think he really gets his due as far as a talent and a great mind for the business. And when just a great guy, nice guy too, did not have a big head about himself whatsoever with all the experience he had coming into XPW in the year 2000 and all that. He was just cordial to us all local guys, and willing, like you said, to share some of his psychology with everybody as well.
Yeah.
I remember him coming to me when I was in the ring in the beginning of the show, and he came, interrupted me, and talked about, you're the good guy announcer. Okay, so this is what I'll say to you, and then you just, I'll go against the local, like, that's why the LA Lakers are doing so horrible, whatever, you make something up.
Yeah.
And then just telling me like, hey, be sure to put so-and-so over commentary, do it, but do it with subtlety. So I remember there are a few guys that came to me about, hey, when you call my match, do this and that. And he was one of the first ones that talked to me about what he felt would sound better. And I remember learning a lot from him in that regard. Didn't say much to me at all, but I knew the little that he said, can't remember the exact thing, but it was just a small aspect of the match and why he did this move to him and what it meant. And that almost just told the rest of the story for that match that I was calling. A great learning experience, a lot of homework right there. And then I, of course, applied that to more matches, and whatnot. But he was a great mind for this business. And
oh yeah,
what a great first experience, early experience for you to have. That must have just, in many ways, took you to the next level to have an experience with somebody like that at that young age that you were at that time.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And like you said, no ego, had no problem
Right.
losing to me, and just carry. And then that was my first experience of being carried through a match like that, where, the guys say, the vets say, hey, we're going to call it in the ring, kid. And I never look at it like that, like I'm a vet, we're going to call it in the ring. I always go back to Tracy Smothers, like, don't worry, we're going to call it in the ring. And that was his total demeanor, was don't worry, because I was so nervous, And so when I tell guys, hey, we're going to call in the ring, it's never that, don't worry, kid, we're going to call in the ring. I always go back to that Tracy Smothers of, really, don't worry, kid, I'll take care of you. And that's what he did. Like, he took 100% care of me in that match. And that's just a testament of how good of a wrestler and how great of a wrestler he is,
So this at this point in time, XPW is not only at the LA Sports Arena, but now we're on television. So, like you said, you're going out there nervous, not only to carry this, to pull off this match and other things of that nature, to make sure you do good for yourself and the company and make it look good. You're not only doing that from the pressures of being at the sports arena, but we're on television. So all these matches are taped for TV, for home video. And again, there's added pressure right there, because this is not just a house show. This is we have to pull off a good match, a good product right here. So at this time, we're on television, we're doing weekly shows, and XPW's starting to really gain some steam right here. Not only locally, but we're syndicated all over the U.S. at this point on the America One Network. And early infancy of the internet, we see like that we're getting feedback from all over the country, right? And now, once we start getting this feedback, and we're making some waves. Speaking of waves, here comes a wave to the West Coast called Heatwave, and it was ECW Heatwave. Heatwave came to the West Coast. ECW, never been to the West Coast before. We talked a little bit about this with Kevin Kleiner. The reason I bring it up to you is because you, myself, and a few others were amongst those that were sitting in those ringside seats at Heatwave that Kevin ended up purchasing. Yeah, there we are, right next to each other there.
Yeah.
But it was you, myself, Billy Messiah, Christy Miss, Lester Supreme, and right next to sitting to Billy's left, the photo's right. Can't see him for whatever reason. This photo was Homeless Jimmy was down there with us too. So it was the 6 of us down there. But anyway, this is it. This is where we were at this time, and it was going to be a publicity stunt. But at the same time, I think a lot of us did take exception to the fact that, here we are, the true upstart company. It wasn't public knowledge at this point in time that WWE was involved with in one fashion or other, backing and supporting ECW. I always said, had the fans known this then, they totally kayfabed that back then. But if the fans at that time knew WWE's involvement, there wouldn't be this underground feel for the fans of this raw upstart league. But we actually were this upstart fed, which I also mentioned, and I don't know if you see this now as well too, Joey, but young fans specifically, or fans that kind of changed their views on this, were like, it was the cool thing to dislike us and to like ECW at that time. But now that I talk to people, they kind of, for lack of better terms, glamorize and give props to what we did then. And I try to tell them, like, well, that was not the consensus back then. We were like, it was cool to hate what we did. But it's interesting to see people's opinion on this now that I talked to, that were like, no, man, that was cool that you guys did that, because you guys truly were renegades. And I always thought ECW was this renegade league. I had no idea that they were backed by the big corporate WWE at the time.
Yeah, so, backed by the man.
Yeah, so at this point in time, we actually were the upstart league, and there it is right there. But nonetheless, we went there, didn't know what was going to happen. We just kind of did our shtick. But then, where were you when you found out you were going to go there? You were going to be one of the ringsiders, and what was your mindset personally? Like, were you offended by that? Were you like, hey, man, screw these guys for coming into our backyard? Like, we're not. I mean, it's cool, but it's also a little funny to look back on all this now. This goes back to, like you're saying though too, Joey, that's the pride that we had. That was legit right there, us sitting ringside being pissed off, because that was our heart and soul. We were all in. And I was just an announcer. I'm no tough guy or anything, but they ripped my shirt off and all that. But I didn't care. You know what I mean? I didn't care if they were going to freaking 60 people, the brawl out in the parking lot, 60 on 1 or whatever it was, the ratio of how many ECW guys were against us. That's the belief that we had. But how was that to you? What was that Heatwave incident like for you? And what was your belief system, your mindset?
Oh, 100%. First of all, right, man, I think I might be the only guy that says this, but ECW had no business coming down to Los Angeles besides to F with XPW.
I think
I think that was the whole reason behind it, because there was always stories about them losing money. I think the farthest they ever made it out was like maybe San Antonio, Texas. And then from there, they jumped straight to Los Angeles. And I think because they felt the heat. They felt the heat from XPW, from this little XPW company that could, man. And like you said, the pride. So I already had that, like, hey, F these motherfuckers coming in here into our backyard, onto our territory.
Yeah.
And
it was way too coincidental that of all places was Los Angeles, right when this was shortly after we got on television. I think that was the catalyst. And it'd be interesting, if this is true, it would be interesting to know if that was WWE influence. Who knows? I mean, but it was too coincidental.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't care how much, like, any ECW guy will tell you, like, this shit was coordinated. They had a guy, what was this guy's name? He had dreadlocks.
Doc Marley.
Doc Marley, yes. Oh, yeah, they hired Doc Marley because they didn't know who we were to point us all out when we walked in. And the craziest thing behind it was, like, it was a publicity stunt, but there was no plan. Like, it's not like Rob Black laid us down and sat us down and said, this is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to do. Like, we had no clue. I think the only clue that we had going into the whole thing was we were going to get our XPW shirts on hard cam. And that was it. That was it. But as soon as we walked in, they had Doc Marley and I don't know who else back there pointing at it. Was an operation. So they can sit there all they want and say that, oh, we just came to LA because of this or that and the other. No, it was because of XPW. Yeah. 100%. Because they wouldn't have been so coordinated on pointing us out. And as soon as we got to the arena, us and any other fans, they said, don't wear your shirt. You can't come in here wearing that shirt. Well, what do you want us to do? Well, you can either take it off, put it inside out, or go get another shirt.
Yeah.
And so we all turned our, well, not all of us. like 5 of us or 6 of us put our shirts inside out. Supreme comes walking up with an XPW shirt on, signing autographs, drinking beer, and I'm like, hey man, they didn't tell you can't wear your shirt. They didn't tell me shit, is what he said. and of course they weren't gonna tell him shit.
No,
I think eventually one of the main Atlas security guys came and said, hey man, we gotta escort you out if you're gonna keep that shirt like that. And so we were kind of like, damn, like they kind of like nixed our whole plan, because the whole plan was just to sit there on the pay-per-view and to be on hard cam. And as you can see, we were even wrong on where the tickets were bought.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So we were on the same side as the hard cam was.
So it was a lose-lose at that point.
Right.
And if they would have just let us wear our shirts, it would have been no big fucking deal. But since they said put your shirts inside out, and since we sat there, and I gotta be honest, I don't know about you, Kloss, but when I sat there, I was like, I couldn't enjoy it, because it was like we're on a mission right now, and we have no clue. And I think, I don't know, it might have been Messiah or Supreme, or I don't know who came up with the idea that, hey, at one certain point we're all gonna stand up and put our shirts right side out. And before we actually decided to do that, we had conversations with Atlas Security, and we said, so what are you gonna do if we put our shirts right side out? Kind of like, we all know why we're here.
Yep.
You know? And he says, well, if you put your shirts right side out, we're going to have to, and I'll quote this word, escort you out of the building. So I thought, oh, what's the big fucking deal? They're going to escort us out of the fucking building. Okay, so we decided we're going to watch, I don't know if you remember this, but we decided we're going to watch pretty much the majority of the pay-per-view. And right before the main event, and to try to have some respect. Now that I look back in retrospect, if we were going to interrupt anybody's part of their match, it was going to be disrespectful no matter what.
Right, totally.
Out of respect, we didn't want to do anything while they were wrestling.
Yeah, I remember that.
We obviously
that was important.
Yeah, we obviously didn't want to do anything between matches. So we kind of had to pick a point where people's focus was on the ring, and then this is what we're going to do. And it happened to happen where Tommy Dreamer and Just Incredible were kind of doing their standoff. Yeah. And so we said, all right, this is it, fellas. Let's all stand up. And as a matter of fact, I remember looking over to my right and being like, fuck, everybody's standing up and nobody told me. Oh my God!
How many times have you watched? I mean, that clip is well, it's on WWE Network now, but which is again why people contact me when they ask about it. They that's where they see it for the first time, and a lot of them didn't even know about this until they look at it and then they read up on it, and they just want to know more about it. And one point you got up. Did that, did the X sign, which is seen on camera.
I only did that is because when we stood up, it was like they were waiting all fucking show for something to go down. And I guess they thought we were going to jump the fucking guardrail. And we had no intention of jumping the fucking guardrail, man.
No, they wanted it. In fact, they were waiting for that to happen. I was telling Kevin, when you see my shirt off right there, that wasn't me turning it inside out or anything. I can't remember who it was, but someone was trying to pull me over the guard railing, and I knew it with that in that split second. Like, that's what they want to do. Because once you're on that opposite side of the guardway and they have free reign, they can beat you up or have you arrested, whatever.
They must have had all the guys waiting backstage during every match, waiting for us to hit something or do something.
Right. Exactly. And so they were just hungry, chomping at the bits, waiting for us. But I just pulled myself out of the shirt so they couldn't pull me over the guard railing. I remember.
I always wondered, where's Kloss's shirt? What the fuck happened?
It's so weird. Yeah.
As soon as I saw us take the shirt, because I remember I split secondly looked over. And the dudes, Supreme was already standing up and taking his shirt. And so I felt like, oh man, I felt like I was behind. And so I guess what the security was doing, they were grabbing the shirts. Okay. And so as soon as I saw that, and I guess they grabbed your shirt or trying to grab you, as soon as I saw that, I go, oh, mission aborted. Turn around to the hard cam and put the X. And I remember Danny Doring telling me, because I wrestled him at XPW, he remember telling me, he told me, that was you? The whole locker room wanted to kill you.
Man. Yeah, and that was obviously crazy, but a good point you made was the fact that, okay, for them to deny that there was any like concern that, or we were on their radar at all. Remember, when coming to the arena for the event, and they had that rule implemented: no XPW signs, no XPW flyers, no XPW T-shirts to be worn, or any merchandise XPW. They had that rule implemented before they even knew where we were sitting, or if there was any stunt that was going to be pulled. So again, why would they have that rule implemented before we did what we did? It wasn't even a known thing that we were going to do anything, but they had that rule implemented long before Heatwave, the day of Heatwave. But WWF shirts were allowed.
They had to hire Doc Marley. You know what I mean? That had to be beforehand.
Right. So this was all, when you look back now at all this, and you can kind of step back and look at all the pieces of the puzzle, you can totally connect the dots. Coincidence? There's just no way that this was all coincidental. There's so many factors now to prove that this is exactly what happened. Yeah. And again, of course, this happened right when got on television. So this was on everybody's radar across the country. And then and then they came, and we actually were in the LA Sports Arena. From what Kevin talked in throughout the years, that's where they were going to attempt to go. But we already had the contract with the Sports Arena, which had them go to the Olympic at that point. But they were gonna try for the LA Sports Arena for Heatwave, not the Olympic Auditorium.
Man, I never even knew that. Like, I guess at the end of the day, like, they didn't even know where we were sitting. You know what I mean? Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about that now. But the truth of it is, if they would have just let us stand up, put our shirts inside out, like, we were never going to jump the fucking guardrail.
No.
If they would have just let us do that, but it was like, we didn't even have I don't think anybody got a chance to put their shirt back on. As soon as you took it off to put it inside out, like, nobody had the chance. And the whole locker room spills out. And we get escorted out. I think Atlas grabbed me by the back of the neck. And
then the brawl ensued outside.
Oh, you know what about that brawl, Kloss? Like, Messiah, for some reason, I have no clue why, but Messiah and myself had gotten escorted ahead of everybody else, and we got thrown out. And I remember Paul Heyman actually swinging and actually hitting Messiah in the side of his head. And I was like, who the fuck is this old guy? And I got 2 Atlas security on each arm. And he just was cussing us out, spitting at us, and this, that, and the other. And I had no clue who he was. He looked like an old dude. And I guess he wasn't going to be on TV, so maybe he didn't dye his hair. So he had all this gray hair. And so that's why I had no clue who Paul Dangerously was. And but I remember they threw me and Billy out, and they actually closed the fucking doors. And me and Billy, like, it was this crazy ass. We stand up, the locker room comes out, Atlas security grabs shirts. I go for the X. They start an XPW chant, which is quickly swallowed up by an ECW chant. I get grabbed by the neck, get thrown out. Billy gets punched at, and then they throw me and Billy out. Like, and this is how I remember it. I could probably be wrong. But it was just me and him outside with the doors closed, and all of a sudden it was quiet. We're on 18th Street, and it's just quiet, and we kind of walk across the street, and we're kind of mad because we're like saying, like, we didn't do any of this. Like, this was their fault. Like, all we did was just gonna turn our shirts around, and they went hog wild on us. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm waiting for you and Supreme and Christy and Homeless Jimmy. Yeah, I'm waiting for them to, like, come out the same way we did, like, throw us out and close the doors, because I guess they didn't want anybody to go spill outside. And But that never happened. So it's me and Billy kind of walk across the street, and we're just kind of waiting with a little bit of distance from the doors. And then all of a sudden, all those guys that you saw come through the front to ringside, who was it? Chili Willy, Big Sal Graciano,
Big Sal, man, yeah.
Roadkill, and you know, the who's who of ECW. You know, none of the main event guys, but all of a sudden the Grand Olympic doors come flying open, and like these 10 guys, ECW wrestlers, come out, and nobody else. Nobody fucking else comes out. And I look at Billy like, this is it. I guess it's gonna go down right now. And like I kind of looked at him, and we had some distance. Like, should we run? And we were like, we're not gonna fucking run. Like, if they're gonna jump us, they're gonna jump us. That's it. Kind of hoping and thinking like, hey, our guys are right behind them, you know. And so they all come walking towards us like a gang, and I'm really fucking scared. Yeah. And fucking Messiah, like goddamn Obi-Wan Kenobi, man. As soon as they come up, Messiah just like, I mean, he probably doesn't throw the force at them, but he just kind of looks at them and it says, hey, man. He starts talking to, I think, Big Sal or somebody or Roadkill. He goes, this is all your guys' fault. All we wanted to do was take our shirts off and show our logo. You guys spilled the arena. You guys did this. You guys did that. This is all your fault. We didn't do anything. And I swear to God, Big Sally and Roadkill, and they all kind of look right and they look left and they kind of start nodding their head and they go, okay, bro. And they walk fucking away, man. It sounds, now that I said the story, it sounds like total bullshit because the only story that ever comes out is that there was this huge brawl.
Yeah.
Which I don't remember. Because when they came up to us, like Billy just went like, we're not the droids you're looking for. You know what I mean? And,
so Billy was living the gimmick.
Oh my God.
He was the Messiah, man.
Yes, he was the Messiah. And then we kind of go to our car and we see the XPW Street Crew team passing out flyers. And we're kind of waiting and trying to see, like, where's everybody else coming out? And I think I see Dynamite D come out and Homeless Jimmy and Supreme.
Yeah, I was with them.
Where, did you guys go in a limo? Is that
no, I was not. I drove.
Who went in the limo?
I don't know. The rumor was that Rob Black was in the limo, but we went straight to the office and he was there. So he wasn't there. That was the rumor. Where it was like I'm not gonna lie too. I was scared too, but even being scared, all right, it was that thing in your head like whatever happens, happens. We'll see what happens, and so we went back to the office that night, and this was like couldn't believe what just happened. So we did that on a pay-per-view. We did this, and the very next week is when we went to the LA Sports Arena for Go Funk Yourself. And so we were gaining some steam. Whether it's negative in press, doesn't matter. Any press is good press. And even though we got the press, some of it was negative, I was always still trying to convey it as much as I could. Like, hey, listen, what you guys are thinking right now is not true. And then Rob Black gave that message on XPW TV, which I still think was pretty damn accurate, you know, as far as like he mentioned, like you did, like, you know, look, they were just coming out, picking on whoever, ring crew, hitting a girl and all this stuff. It's like, wow, if only people knew. So fast forward again to LA Sports Arena the following week. Go Funk Yourself. You know, that entire bowl is filled up. It definitely felt at this time like nothing I've ever experienced in professional wrestling. And not only that, but a lot of people had never seen this before. You know, where there is a true war going on now. It wasn't like a la, like, let's stage an invasion like we've seen on TV so many times. This really happened. Like you said, it was very truthful. It was very real. No matter whose side you were on, this actually happened. And whether people liked it or not, it got eyeballs on the product. People were watching us. People were taking notice. And in many ways, like going to the sports arena, upping your game, getting on television, even this war right here, I believe stepped our game up too, and it just increased that pride that we already had in XPW, because we were ready to die for our baby. You know, this was our team, right here. And a lot of us, I think, carried that on to our next performances, our next shows. And you know, I think this is the time too where people in XPW were starting to really evolve into their character. And you specifically right now, because this is before you became Rock Superstar Kaos, but before you became your character Rock Superstar, late stages of Kid Chaos was evolving quite a bit from the days of the Reseda Country Club to the days of LA Sports Arena, Patriot Hall, and then the Grand Olympic Auditorium. Talk a little bit about where your mind was at before you jumped to being a heel, the blonde hair, the Rock Superstar. Did you feel like you were gonna, did you want to transition to a heel? Did you want to do something different, or did you want to build more on the Kid Chaos character?
Yeah, you know, I actually told Rob Black I didn't want to get lost in the shuffle, but to cap off the ECW thing, like as soon as we did that, like we were known worldwide the next day. Like Japan knew, we were in Japanese magazines, we were doing this, like we were known everywhere as soon as we did that invasion. And to this day, Kloss, I think it's the only true real invasion in professional wrestling history.
Yeah, at least on there might have been
right?
some shows here and there, but nothing on that level.
Nothing to the paper. Yeah.
Yeah. It was definitely the first. It was definitely the first. And if there were copies of it later, fine. But again, nothing on that scale before.
Yeah, like we were we were known. We were on all the Japanese websites the next day from that.
And,
like
and the more ECW was pissed off about it, the more it put that invasion over anyway.
Oh yeah, you know, yeah. and hey man, like I guess I'm really proud of that, because that's like what we did, right? What we sacrificed, right? Because everyone hated us for it. Everybody, like I'm pretty sure all the workers in indie fucking wrestling in New Jersey probably hated us. You know what I mean? Like everyone hated us and wasn't going to book us because of it. But since us doing that, it's like we created our own road and our own path for us to be recognized. Like, because it wasn't just Rob Black putting money into a company and it was just big. Like it took us, you and me, to go in that front row and figure something out, to get our names on the map. You know what I mean? But yeah, like, and I totally would do it again. And yeah, all this ECW brawl talk it's all bullshit. It totally is bullshit. Yeah, and
total bullshit.
Yeah, and fuck Southeast Santino.
It was bully tactics for sure, and it wasn't nothing to be proud of on their end. Or if we did anything like that, it would be like, really, that's what you're proud of, like beating up a fan or a ring crew. But when you say that, just to reiterate, it wasn't just to put ourselves on the map. It was these guys coming into our backyard. So it wasn't like we were just going to some random WWE event that they would come into LA regardless to put ourselves on the map. It wasn't just that. It was actually more that they were coming into our backyard versus us going to a national fed just to try to put ourselves over. It was really that they were coming into our territory. We were gaining steam and they wanted to put a halt to that. And that's where the exception came in right there. So, you know, for people that say like, well, you just guys were using this fed to put yourselves on the map. We could have gone to Staples Center and done that with WWE. Like that's different than somebody. Imagine if, like, for example, like if we were just to go to Philly, you know, like obviously we'd be going there because ECW was there, you know, and they would have took exception for that. Or what happened, like if WWF went to WCW and did something no different, you know, so, but at the same time, it would have been the coolest thing. I mean, what do people say to this day when DX invaded Nitro? That was great. That was awesome that they did that. Well, what's the difference? You know what I mean? So it's just funny how like it's a double standard sometimes. Like, it's not the idea. It's like, wait a minute, who's the one that did it though? You know, like
people loved to hate XPW. They loved to hate it. Like, it wasn't just East Coast fans. Like, there was West Coast fans that hated XPW. You know what I mean? Like, they just loved to hate it. And
you either loved or hated it. It was like kind of like it's like the Raiders of NFL. You either love them or hate them. There's no in between with a team like that. You know, it's one or the other. And so, but again, which is kind of cool, going back to like current day 2020, looking at people's Twitter messages or Facebook, and not really knowing the history, looking at it from fresh eyes, saying like, wow, that's awesome that you guys did that. Wow, I had no idea. And so from a fresh perspective, it's like, all right, see, now that they're not talking out of bias right there. They're not talking out of censoring their own reality or perception before they make a decision. It's like, okay, this is what you did. I have no ties or opinion on you guys. Tell me what you did. Oh, this is what you did? Oh, that's pretty cool. It's like, thank you. All right, thanks for appreciating that. And was that real? Was that real that this happened? Like, yeah, that was real. No, I'm telling you it was. I don't know. Even someone that went through it, I can explain to them that this is real. Lots still won't believe it. I was like, that was real, you know, and we really did it. So and again, going back to them coming to the West Coast. Now this is at a time when, okay, so we were at the sports arena. We fast forward a little bit to where we went to the Grand Olympic Auditorium. Ironically, we went to the Olympic where Heatwave was. Not only that, but half the roster that was at Heatwave ended up working for us. You know what I mean? and so this was at a time where we were getting a lot of stars coming in to XPW. The television show had a lot of momentum. And I think this was a pivotal point for you personally, because with the influx of stars, the influx of DVD distribution, television, because of all these guys coming in from the big time, if you will, ironically, when all these guys start coming in was when you got your big push. Go figure. You're getting the homegrown talent is getting this big heel turn now. You create this faction called the Enterprise. You do the whole transformation where you go heel. Again, for people that don't remember or the Kid Chaos character, it was like, wow, this is the last guy who I would expect to turn heel. What was it? How was it like for you to take on this heel persona? And were you prepared for it? Did you want to do it? Were you excited for it? What was going through your mind, Joey, when this was all transpiring?
Well, like at this time, you know, like there was I came up with Christian Blood, and Christian Blood, like on the first XPW show, was in the main event, and Supreme was in multiple main event or at least featured matches, and Messiah was in main events or had title runs or whatever the case was, and here I am, Kid Chaos. And so I actually go up to Rob Black, you know, one of them legendary Tuesday night meetings or whatever before the meetings. And I tell him, like, straight out, I tell him, like, hey, man, like, I don't want to get lost in the shuffle. And, you know, like, and Rob Black was like, well, what can you do? You know what I mean? Like, what can you do? And I don't know how it came out, but Rob Black was looking for somebody to bleach their hair. And Messiah was like, oh, Chaos will do it right away. And so what ended up turning out was they said, hey, remember you went into the office and you said you didn't want to get lost in the shuffle? Well, we actually want you to do that in an XPW promo. And I actually ended up doing that, sitting there in front of Rob and in his office and telling him I don't want to get lost in the shuffle. And man, it kind of escapes my mind right now on how the transition was. If there was a transition, or I think I just bleached my hair. And Rob Black kind of just told me, here's what I want you to do. I want you to be like a wrestler who doesn't want to wrestle, but wants to do a pose off and really flex your muscles and do this, that, and the other. And so, but like there was no direction behind it, you know. So I bleached my hair, I changed my gear, I take some steroids to get jacked and big, and I remember Damian Steele used to tan, so I started tanning and just really transformed the whole, my whole persona. But to be honest, at the time, like they put me in there with Smiley and Steve Rosano and Veronica Kane, and I didn't want to be with the faction at all.
Oh, wow.
I did not want to be like I felt like I was going to get lost in the shuffle again in my own faction, and and I couldn't be more wrong. You know what I mean? Like it was like the faction itself like really elevated me. And as you notice it now, like, you know, wrestler comes out with a whole faction. It's like, dude, that wrestler should be paid attention to, you know? And I had the manager, a valet, you know what I mean? And I had so many like things to work with. And it was like, honestly, like the best time. It was probably like 2 years of my career, but the best time of my entire career was being part of the Enterprise, being the Rock Superstar Kaos. And I actually just heard a podcast from Rob Black where he was like the whole character was based off the song, The Rock Superstar. You know what I mean? And he would say like sometimes like a whole show would be based off a Metallica album, and that's how I would think about it. And I was kind of like, that was the first time I ever heard about it. You know what I mean? Which is kind of a good way to kind of look at it, because like, I think it does work. But yeah, like that was the direction, was just try to just do pose offs and really pose a lot and do push-ups in the middle of the match, and here's your music. And so it was like everything worked with the Rock Superstar Kaos. Like I was over like Rover, like incredibly over. I'd be whether it was a semi-main event or in the mid part of the card, like it was an exciting time for the fans to kind of see the whole entourage come out, you know? And just working with Smiley or Ryan Katz, like it just really helped me out with my promos. And that's why they put him with me, because I couldn't cut a promo to save my life, you know? And so
you definitely evolved into that though. Personally, I think this was a huge catalyst for you as far as not only work ethic in the ring, but just being comfortable. I mean, I remember you were the first person that I interviewed in the ring. And I remember you were nervous, man. Yeah, I was nervous too, you know, but you were like, okay, when we talk, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to talk about this? And, you know, it's like, well, this is the concept, and we'll just make it flow out there. And you were, like the stories you hear about Macho Man, you were very like, okay, but when are we going to say this, that, and the other?
Yeah.
And that was Kid Chaos at that time, though. But from those, and I remember I was nervous too, man. Like being out, we're going to do a live interview in the middle of the ring, but from those days, man, to you being on the mic to Rock Superstar days toward the end, oh man, bro, night and day. And I'm saying this for myself too. Like, I can't stand listening to Hardcore Conception. I was talking to Kevin, my play-by-play versus. So, I mean, there was an evolution for all of us, but a huge evolution for you from the days of just honing your skills on the mic, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. You know, like Smiley helped me out so much. Just kind of sitting there listening to him while he would cut the promo, and then I would hit like the one-liner or whatever it was. Like I didn't realize at that time, like even though I might just have one line in the entire promo, that I'm actually learning from him with his flow and the way he talks and the words that he uses. And it's kind of, it's at least giving me the skills to be able to teach it and get by on it on my own. But yeah, like you said, like in the beginning, like I had no skills whatsoever. Like I would have never been able to get by with just give me the mic and let me start talking. Like I had to have Kris Kloss out there to kind of drive the interview, because otherwise I was just, really like cocooned up and pulled my turtle head in, because
which kind of fit the Kid Chaos gimmick.
Yeah.
Anyway. Like the I'm gonna give it my all, folks, you know, type. Yeah. So I mean, it worked. It definitely worked, which is maybe why Kevin or Rob wanted that. I don't know. Looking back in retrospect, it does make sense, possibly.
But yeah, it was night and day from going to really good wrestler or doing stuff that I really think is fun to now going to be a character that people are just all about. Like they used to be people, like kids used to like dress up as Chaos like multiple times, different shows.
Yeah, man.
Like,
Totally.
and that's just a crazy thing, like, to think about. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Oh, look at this fucking mark. You know, but now I think about it, I'm like, damn, that was really fucking cool. You
Made
know?
quite the impact.
Yeah, totally was. But that was probably the best thing, but that could happen to me in XPW. But it was like I was willing to do anything, and I probably wouldn't have bleached my hair. But it became like kind of my look, my persona. It's always been something that, like, when people want me to wrestle, like, are you, please bleach your hair? We want you to bleach your hair. And for a long time, for 8 years, I had my hair growing out long. And then, like, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I cut it again and started bleaching it for little matches here and there. Just because people love seeing the Chaos character. Like, it was that impressionable. And I got people that, like, come up and say, man, I used to watch you with my dad, and I was like 8 years old. You know, and they're grown ass people now, and just like, yeah, I used to watch Chaos. And sometimes the students don't realize it when these guys come up to me, like, yeah, I'm that old, man. I don't look that old, but I am that old.
Well, you know, that was awesome with the Enterprise, and then now you had talking about, like, the great late Supreme, your uncle Dynamite D. I remember a match you had. You and Dynamite D had some amazing matches. I mean, 5-star matches. You guys knew each other very well, but you worked very well together. And, you know, you guys did a death match at the Olympic, I remember, but you also had some great back and forth technical, scientific matches.
Yeah.
So you guys were able to do both. How was it? Was he, in your mind, I mean, I want to go over him, of course, Lester, and then you also had some very good matches. I was a big fan of you and Chris Hamrick. Were very good matches, ladder matches that you had in Philadelphia. But, like, what are some of your memories about D specifically, Dynamite, the late great Dynamite D? And was he, in your mind, like one of your best opponents, someone to work with?
You know, thinking about it now, like going back to that, we had a TV title tournament match,
right?
And we worked really hard on that match. I think kind of like we actually practiced it a number of times, and it would blow us up. We wouldn't get it right, and this, that, and the other. And man, it just so happens we went out there on that, and this was both of our second matches of the night, and totally like. You know, like backstage talk was this should have been the TV title tournament main event, and I think it ended up being me versus Conan. But me and Dynamite D went out there and we tore the house down like Dynamite D. Like, at the time, I was just a sponge, you know. And when me and Dynamite D met for the first time, he was building the XPW ring at the old Leadwell office. At XPW, and we were there on a Tuesday night, and when I say we, it was me and Supreme, and we weren't necessarily helping him put the ring together. And like me and Supremes were, well, we never put a ring together. We don't know how, you know, so we're not just going to help you, you know. And Dynamite D was like, hey, fuck you guys. Like, you guys got no work ethic. You should be helping. We all should be helping there, putting the fucking ring up. And we're like, hey, bro, we never put up a ring, man. So don't come at us like that. And that was kind of like me and Dynamite D's first interaction, like a real interaction. And but later on, we became like really great friends.
And for him to be like that, just remember, like, everybody that knows D, like, he's maybe the nicest guy in the locker room.
Oh yeah.
So for him to say something like that showed you his work ethic, because he wasn't a dick to anybody, man. Even if someone was a dick, he was still a nice guy, you know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and this must have been weeks on coming, where he's putting his ring together and he sees Supreme and Chaos, who he's like, who the fuck are these guys? What school do they come from? And they ain't never fucking helping out, man.
Yeah, and, I mean, when any of us would, I mean, I knew D for a long time from the Slammers days, but even like if I were to walk through, or a referee, Danny or Pat would walk through, he would be like, it was like your parents when you were a kid, like, hey, these dishes aren't going to do themselves. Like, get over here, you know, help me out, man. You're not gonna go play with your friends unless you take the trash out or do something. And that was the almost like a family, we were back there. And someone was he was acting like a dick when it was good for you and the family, if you will.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like a parent talking to a kid. Okay, no, he's a dick, but at the end of the day, no, I'm not a dick. I'm just doing what's good for you, even though you hate it in the moment, type thing. That was the values that he brought to the table.
And I think like that's a testament to like, like we didn't have heat. Like we became really good friends, and Dynamite D, I always credit as being like the first one to really take me under his wing and teach me about psychology of wrestling. And he's definitely not by any means the first person that taught me psychology, but he was the first person that taught me, and I was able to start grasping it, and start understanding it. And he'd be just like, I never said, hey, can you be my mentor? But he became my mentor because I asked this question. I would drive like an hour from Hollywood to where he lived in the west end of the valley, just to go work out at Valley Total Fitness with him. And I would do that 5 days a week in traffic just to go work out with him, pick his brain and whatnot. And so we had this match that we were so proud of. We worked really hard on. And man, like we really, like if you talk to us right after, I know we were kind of like, it could have been better. I think that's every wrestler, right? That's every wrestler's going to say that. But looking back at it now, like we totally tore the house down. And I remember Dynamite D came up with this move. And this is Dynamite D, right? Old school Dynamite D. And he said, hey, I'm going to try to give you a Frankensteiner. And I want you to counter it and give me a pile driver. Right. And me being the young, dumb fucking wrestler, I go, hey, Dynamite D, like that sounds cool. But I think that's got to be the finish. Like, it can't be a cutoff. Like, he wanted it to be a cutoff. And I'm over here not knowing shit about psychology, telling him, hey, man, this should be the finish. And he kind of, like, fought me on it. And then finally he was like, okay, we'll do it as the finish. And I remember, like, we went out there and we had a great match. And I'm doing moves, like, an Aside moonsault that I've never done. And Dynamite D's got to catch my big-ass 220 pounds. And man, we tear the house down, and it comes to the point, and we're like in a 20-minute match at this point, and it's our second match of the night. I know that I have a third match, so you try to keep some reserves. Like you don't want to just let it all go. You got to kind of keep some reserves. And so it comes to the point where, and Dynamite D is huge at the time. He's got these thick ass fucking legs, and he goes up and he's gonna give me the Frankensteiner. And he goes for it, and I stop him. And I still see today, like I try to tell my students, hey, steal this fucking move. This is a great move that Dynamite D came up with, and nobody's fucking using it. And man, as soon as I stopped him on that Frankensteiner, pumped him up for the pile driver and hit it, like I rewatch that sometimes, and you see the fans just pop up like these old days, like it's Ricky Steamboat versus Flair. You know what I mean? And they pop up like. And I remember seeing Tom Byron, and Tom Byron really, he loved it, but like Tom Byron really didn't get into it as much. Like he was the iconic, legendary porn guy, you know what I mean? And but Tom Byron was there, and I remember him, and you could see him on the hard cam, and he's all XPW, XPW, like everyone is chanting and cheering, and man, and I had to go out there at the end of that and do another match. But that was like an incredible match that I have with Dynamite D. And sometimes it goes up on YouTube. Sometimes they pull it back down. But yeah, that was probably one of my favorite matches that I've ever done. And like we worked on it really hard. I remember like we called it like the back of our hand. Like we knew it 100%. Like everything was called. It was kind of like the Randy Savage was Ricky Steamboat, and you hear about how they called everything, you know what I mean? And people go, oh, that's why it was a good match, because you called it in the back. But that's how me and Dynamite D did it, and man, he was incredibly great. And yeah, you know, and yeah, he was incredibly great, and just, you know, like really gone way too soon, you know, just really gone way too soon. And just kind of like, I remember at the time in 2007 just really being torn up about it, about
I remember him. That too, man.
Yeah. And just
I remember you and I had a conversation once. There was a show we did, and I brought the merchandise to sell, like his his shirts, the in memory of. And I remember I don't think you knew I was there. I didn't know who was on the card. And you came up and at the table, and we were both just like, I still, this is maybe a month after he'd gone. And we were both sitting there like, I still can't believe it. It still doesn't seem real, and basically just talking about stuff we're talking about right now, like what he did in the ring, but also how he was outside the ring. Just one of the big guys in the business. Did not have a freaking ego about himself.
Really, like Dynamite D really has structured the Coach Chaos of who I am today. Like I try to understand, and I think that's what Dynamite D did. Like, he was this young wrestler at one point and had an ego at one point, and then you can kind of see where he had that ego when we'd be chilling in the backyard at the pool, and he'd be just talking like a wrestler. But then for the most part, he would talk to me as this coach mentor.
Yeah.
And I've always strived to kind of have that demeanor with my students of just, and I think that's why he was so well respected. Dynamite D was, it's like you said, because he wouldn't sugarcoat stuff. He would tell you how it was, but at the same time, be the nicest guy in the world about it, and also empathize with you. You know what I mean? And you could sit there and you could talk to him about hours and hours and hours about wrestling and pick his brain. And he was there to wanted to answer your questions and help you out. And, and man, just an incredible guy. And I still keep in touch with his mom, and, but yeah, like we used to do the at Santino Brothers, we would do the Mr. 80s Dynamite D flashback show, and
you guys were very good about keeping his memory alive, and that was awesome.
We actually did that, and then one day his mom called and says, "Hey, it's just really hard for me that you guys do this show, and you guys can still do it, but I don't, I'm not gonna, it's just hard. It brings up bad memories." And so when she told me that, that's when I said, okay, we can kind of put that to rest. We did it, and so that's why I felt about putting it to rest and not keep it going every year. Cause I didn't want to put bad memories into her every year. I'm posting about it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, like we love doing it. And people would give us a hard time sometimes because they didn't understand. They were like, "What are you guys doing? Ripping off gimmicks?" And it was like, "No, dude, it's a tribute show. It's a tribute show for our mentor." But yeah, and the whole reason behind Santino Brothers is what Dynamite D told me, like nobody knew he was in the hospital. At least I didn't know. And I remember Jake Lawless, his roommate, calling me up and saying, "Hey, man, Dynamite's in the hospital, man, and you should get down there and go see him. He's been in there for a while. He doesn't want to tell anybody." Yeah. And I remember I went down there, and it was so hard seeing him in there, and I didn't know what to talk about, or because he's usually the mentor guy or the guy that really know how to talk in those situations. And so we just started talking about wrestling, because that's all we always used to talk about anyway. And I remember just telling him about what I was doing and this, that, and the other. And he just said, "That's really good. That's what you got to do. You got to keep the dream alive." And that's kind of like really the one last thing that I remember him telling me. And then it was like, I don't know, a few weeks later that he passed away. And I totally remember that. And when we had the opportunity to start the school, I remember him telling me, "You got to keep the dream alive." And it just kind of really hit me like it's his dream also. And so I kind of had that feeling and thinking behind it. And, but yeah, like we have that up there. When we had the dojo up, his banner sat there for 10 plus years. It said his guardian angel. And then we have I got students that'll make these beautiful wooden plaques that say that say "Keep the dream alive." And it's just so incredible about that, like what he told me and how we've taken it, and just really kind of really holding it to heart of just of keeping not only his dream alive, but of and we just had Supreme pass 2 months ago, and it's like everybody that we've known in wrestling, to really try to help keep their dream alive. And I think that's probably a lot of the part of the success of Santino Brothers is because of the passion behind it and the reasons behind why we're doing stuff. It's not just because we want to be a wrestling school, but it's, you know, the passion of like really feeling the Dynamite D role, because I'd hear a lot of people always talk about Dynamite D was the trainer and Dynamite D would teach the guys this. And even in our school, like I remember his mom, Dynamite D's mom, gave me a box, says, you want this box of stuff of Dynamite D? Had some t-shirts and Slammer videos and all this stuff. And I remember rummaging through that box and I saw this little piece of yellow paper. It's like the Holy Grail. And it said 14, 15, 16, 17 or something like that. And it said, and it was a little whipped up piece of paper that was a part of his curriculum in Slammers. Wow. And the light bulb goes off in my head. And I said, why don't we have a curriculum for wrestling school? And I think like really, like we're probably one of the only schools that has a curriculum that we rigorously follow. And that's because I found that little piece of paper that said, you know, lesson 15, 16, 17, 18. And yeah, man. And I was like, the light bulb went off and I said, I have to fill in the gaps. And I took his 15, 16, 17, 18 and I wrote them down and I did my best to fill in the gaps. And that was a tremendous tool to help us with our success at Santino Brothers. And that was just Dynamite D. You know, a couple of years after he dies, I get this box of him still trying to help us out and still mentoring us, you know?
It just sounds like that it was definitely meant to be. You find it and keeping that on. I remember too, you know, like you said, it wasn't easy visiting him in the hospital. And I remember going down to downtown, the hospital there. And I remember like I was, you know, just feeling like down being there. But I remember thinking like, okay, when I go in here, I got to just be uplifting and not be down about this. I remember it was impossible to do. So I remember when I went in there, now he was under some, he was swelled up, right? So his arm for the IV, whatever that was in him or the medicine he was taking, his arm was like all swelled up. So here I and whoever else was there we were all there visiting him, kind of somber, feeling down, when we're the ones, you know, there to try to lift his spirit up. So what does he say to us when his arm swelled up? He goes, now I got the 24-inch pythons, brother. And he's the one in the hospital bed making us laugh. And it was like, you know, I've tried to have a game plan, like, okay, what am I going to do to make him feel good and all that? And here beats us all to the punch, man. He's the one sick in bed, and he was wanting us to feel good. That was deep, you know, in a nutshell, right there.
That was deep.
And I want to tell you, man, I checked out your video recently, the one you did paying tribute to your uncle Supreme, and I thought that was really great, touching, and just a lot of class went into that. And really nice to hear those great kind words that you said about Supreme, and of course he's missed very much so now too. Yeah.
You know, it's like you know, like I man, when Dynamite D passed away, like it was incredibly devastating. It totally changed my life. I mean, obviously, totally unexpected. And then with Supreme passing, like it was like totally like the same feelings and the same blow to me. And it's like I'm almost totally more quiet about Supreme's passing because I'm totally devastated, to be honest with you. You know, like it's just almost still to this day, what is it, 3 months later, it doesn't seem real. Like, you know what I mean? And like what I did that video, and one of the main things that I said, and what I do remember was like, I just thought I had more time, you know, with Supreme. We were supposed to, and I didn't tell him this, but he really wanted to wrestle. So I put him on the show to wrestle Eli, and, you know, and my idea was that Eli was going to have a guy come in, Eli Everfly was going to have a guy come in and help him out and jump Supreme, and who was going to save Supreme. And, you know, here comes Chaos come to save Supreme to set up a tag team match. And like, we were supposed to do a tag team and kind of get and then I wanted to talk to Billy Messiah, and then maybe we'll all do a 6-way, because at the end of the day, we all want to wrestle, but we all don't want to be in a singles match either. Like, you know what I mean? Man, and I keep thinking about that, like what we were gonna do, and I just felt like we just didn't. Like I felt like I had so much time, and this is something that I preach with to a lot of the students, and even before Supreme passed, was like me and Supreme, you know, we had a falling out and for a couple of years, and sometimes we'd have a falling out here and there, on and off, like kind of, you know, falling out, we get back together, we're cool, falling out. And there was just one time we had a falling out, and I think we were estranged for probably like 3 years. And I totally regret that 100% to this day, of just being away from him for those 3 years, not having memories with him for those 3 years. Because like I told you, when I started wrestling, the only thing I wanted to do was hang out with my uncle. I didn't care to be a wrestler. I didn't care to try to take this to the next level. Like, and that's the difference that I have with a lot of people, is that I did not get into this because I wanted to be the world champ. Yeah, at a certain point, I always wanted to become a world champ, but I got into this because I wanted to hang out with my uncle Supreme, and that was it, 100%. That's all I wanted to do, you know? And I feel 100% like Supreme gave me everything in pro wrestling, like gave me my life, because that's like my life is defined as a pro wrestler, a coach, a trainer, the wrestling school, whatever the case is. And it's all like I have all the praise and thanks to give to Supreme, because it was him that.
It was a great shot of both you guys. Just
yeah. That was there. And that was actually, we were estranged, and I was getting inducted into the Southern California Hall of Fame, and he called me up, and that was the call, and he was like,
awesome,
"You're my nephew, and we're not mad anymore, and there's no way I would miss this." And like that just meant so much to me. And you know, and from those 3 years that we got together, like it was in 2017, like I'm just so grateful for all those years, and then especially this last year. And it was like almost like a written story. Like this last year, we just really got a lot of chance to hang out. Like I hung out with him on his birthday, on my birthday, and it was like we really didn't do that for the last couple of years. And you know, so this last year of his passing, he started coming to the dojo, and he would just wanted to get back in shape because he wanted to wrestle. And then I would just have some students come over and have him train them, and you could just really see the life coming back into him at the time. And the worst part about it was, like in February, like he looked better. He looked a lot better than we had seen him in previous years. And you know, like he looked so much better, and it's just unfortunate. Like he just took a terrible turn for the worse. And during all this COVID, like he was supposed to have that wrestling match, and you know, just a lot of stuff was taken away, and just like, yeah, just incredibly devastated. And you know, with COVID, with my aunt, we haven't been able to have a physical funeral or anything like that. And so it's just kind of, we haven't had that closure with him. And so it's just, this one's been really tough, you know. It's been, I've been taking a lot of hits in 2020, and this one just tops it all with Supreme passing. You know, it's something I probably could have never imagined, you know. Like I just keep saying it. Like I thought I had more time with him, you know.
Yeah, I think right now, just you talking, I can't thank you enough for sharing all that about, you know, someone that you looked up to so much. And I just, you know, I hear you say the word regret, but man, no regrets there, man, because just you talking like this exemplifies like how much what you really think and how you feel, and make no mistake, like he definitely hears you right now for sure. And nothing to regret, man.
Yeah, like I always tell people, man, don't play that heat game, man. Don't play that fucking heat game, because
it's so easy to do that, man.
Yeah, like all you do is lose time with people that you actually care about. And like I'm gonna preach that till my end of days about heat.
Yeah.
Like heat is not real, man. Like I guess it is like even Bruiser Brody probably would have been cool with the Invader if they didn't actually have that one incident. Like, you know what I mean? Like he can get so stupid. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, like we both are wrestlers. We both love wrestling. Like we should probably get along. Like, you know what I mean?
It's funny. It's like heat in life is just like heat in wrestling. It's all one big work.
Yeah.
It's all one big work.
Yeah,
well,
totally is.
Well, Chaos, going back to, we're talking about the memories and all that, the great Dynamite D and Supreme. And then when I was speaking about Dynamite D and all the great matches you had with him, like I said, there were a few others that you could really work well. Before we go into that, though, talking about like the firsts in wrestling, the first time things would happen. I mean, you, for all intents and purposes, for all I can remember, you were like the first guy ever to like wear his championship belt in his entire match. And I thought that was a stroke of brilliance too, because it fit the gimmick. It helped you stand out. And what a great thing to do as a heel, because here's like this guy that's the superstar, but it represented the ego and the insecurity of a bad guy that you always needed that security blanket with you, yet it put you over as this champion, the television champion. Okay, man. So we're coming to the end here, but just want to talk to you a little bit about when we were going back east, XPW. And this was like you're riding that wave of the Rock Superstar. Now you're having incredible matches, and one of which was that ladder match you had on the East Coast at Viking Hall / ECW / XPW Arena with Chris Hamrick. And how was it like working with him? And then you guys kind of crossed paths a little bit in Wrestling Society X on MTV as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I loved working with Chris Hamrick. I remember we would butt heads a little bit because he used to come and he used to just hand me a piece of paper and say, "Here's our match." Oh, wow. And I'd be like, "Hey, fuck you, man. I'm calling the match too." But he was a great opponent, really pushed me to be my best. And that ladder match I thought it was really good ladder match. I think we both kind of went to the end at the end of it and thought like it could have been better. But some of the moves that we did and some of the stuff that we did were very innovative, and I still don't think people do it today. Like we kind of hooked the ladder on the ring post, and he used it as a slingshot. I remember him grabbing the ladder from him, drop kicking me to kind of protect myself, but then him doing a dive on me while I'm holding it. So we did a lot of cool stuff, and
check that match out if you haven't seen it. Now that was on Hostile Takeover, the first show.
Yeah, correct? That was
XPW Hostile Takeover in Philadelphia, and that was just a hot show all around. But great match you had with him, and looking back now. And also Wrestling Society X, you had a good spot in there too. Unfortunately, short-lived, but in many ways, put you on the map. Put a lot of people on the map. And what was it like? What was it like for you? What was your mindset when you heard about Wrestling Society X and all of the guys you knew that we knew that were involved together in it? Where was your head at that time compared, let's say, to XPW or anything that you were actually doing at the time? Because you were starting Santino Brothers up, you were teaming up with Mongol, fighting Santino Brothers tag team, but you got this opportunity to come in, as we all did, with Wrestling Society X. A lot of exposure, major network, but maybe not as much freedom as we had, let's say, in XPW, or that you were having as fighting Santino Brothers.
I mean, I thought like with WSX, I thought this was it. This was it.
Right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it went 10 days? 10 days of shooting, maybe. I know we did a pilot, and then like a year later, we did the actual shoot of everything. But I think it was 10 days of shooting and 4 episodes in 4 weeks, right? So that was the extent of the entire WSX. But I mean, I loved it. I thought it.
Well, we got every episode did air on MTV except for the last episode.
Right, but I think it aired episodically 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I think it went episodically 4 weeks, and I think that 5th week they played. I guess there was a contract that they had to play every episode, right? They couldn't just cut us. They had to play, so they played every episode like in the middle of the night. So that was a brand new episode, and they just played them all through in a marathon or something like that.
So I remember at the Burbank offices at PhotoChem, where MTV used for our production, it was like every week there was a meeting, and as an associate producer, myself, Devin, and I can't remember who was credited, but I think Kevin was credited with. I don't want to mess this up, but anyway, we were there, and it just all switched that week 4 to 5, because building up to the advent of WSX, the network was totally behind Wrestling Society X, and this was at a time when they were doing shows like 16 and Pregnant and all these girly shows, and they at that time MTV wanted to recapture the male audience that they totally lost with the Jackass shows and all that. And so we were one of many shows that were brought on board to kind of recapture that male audience. Well, week 4, week 5, by that time, all of management changed in MTV, and they literally like reverted back to like, what is this stuff? We don't want the Jackass audience. We want these 16 and Pregnant shows are good numbers and all this. So at that point, there was just zero interest. Unfortunately, all the people that were behind us, there was a whole clean out of corporate, of the company. They got rid of a lot of people, hired more people in, and that was a different mindset now that MTV had, and the writing was on the wall at that point. So very unfortunate circumstances at that point in time, because we were just finishing out the shows, and we didn't know. We knew it was the end, but we didn't know if maybe another network will pick us up. So we still finished the shows out as far as post-production was concerned. But it was like you said, it was like at that point in time, they were contractually obligated to air our shows, but they would just kind of sneak us in on those nighttime, like to go against an infomercial or something like that, So speaking of Wrestling Society X, unfortunately the writing was on the wall with MTV. But again, leading up to it, what was your take from WSX? What was your mindset going into that, and what did that do for your career and your outlook on professional wrestling?
You know what's funny is that you say that Jackass was on MTV, right? I remember specifically them saying the network, right? MTV doesn't want you to. They don't want, I think we had this crystal ball, and I was wrestling M-Dog, and we were trying to figure out how to use it, because they said you can't swing it or hit anybody in the head with it. So we had to figure out how to do it. And it's just so funny that you bring up Jackass. Like Jackass was all about that, but then here comes this wrestling show that it's everything has worked, and they're like, no, we don't want the kids to just hit each other over the head, but we'll keep airing reruns of Jackass.
Where it happened for real. Where, Jackass was a real thing, and that was acceptable, but a planned stage wrestling show, nope, can't do it. It just, a lot of things did not make sense. And as cool as it was to be on a network, you definitely had a catch-22 with that, because for everything that was great about this exposure, you had to fight City Hall, so to speak, and you talk about limited freedom, for WSX. But when you look back, what is your view as far as both WSX? I know we're mostly talking about XPW, but primarily, what do you see as the legacy of XPW? I know it's in a nutshell; it's hard to, but
I guess for XPW, the renegade style or the renegade attitude would be the legacy of it. Just like that fuck you attitude that everybody had, and I often talk about it today. When I talk about like how everybody in wrestling has got this, and I'll tell my students, it's like, you guys pretend that you're supporting each other when deep down inside, hey, fuck you, that's my fucking spot. That I like, you know what I mean? And I think too many people are like, oh, I'm so happy to see this person made it here. Yeah, what about you? You happy that you didn't make it yet? Because fuck all this fucking happy-go-lucky bullshit. And I think that's the spirit that XPW had, was like, hey, fuck you, man. Like, you got to earn your spot to get there. And I like that legacy about XPW, and I often talk about like, hey, I need to bring that kind of back. Like, I get like we don't want to ruffle feathers, but at the same time, man, it's just too get along gangy for me. You know, I want that little bit of competition or that little bit of attitude. Yeah, like everyone's just too friendly. Oh, that was a great match. Ooh, like man, it's too fucking friendly, man. You know what I mean? I think,
yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you have to go through those uncomfortable moments at that time. In the moment you're in that experience, it might be uncomfortable, or I never would have wished this upon myself to be going through something like this. But those are the moments that help you build that character, and you're not who you are despite what you go through. You are who you are because of what you go through. It might seem nightmarish at the moment, but those nightmares are really gifts disguised as nightmares. And that hardcore attitude, way of being, it's like you need that little nudging, that little flip of the switch sometimes that you might not like in that moment. And that was every day with XPW. You know, that was all the time.
I often tell my students, I say like, hey, like we talk about being too friendly, but I say, hey, you got to have a little motherfucker in you. You know what I mean? You got to have that motherfucker in you. This is pro wrestling. I get it. Like times are changing and everything's evolved, but it's still pro fucking wrestling. Right. Like I'm still going to clothesline you and the ring is still going to fucking hurt like a motherfucker. Like, so got to have that little bit of motherfucker in you. You can't just be so friendly and trust everybody, right? This is pro wrestling. Why would you trust everybody?
Yeah, right. And I think for me, I couldn't agree with you more as far as the legacy of why there is what the legacy is of XPW. But I remember specifically when we went to WSX and we're doing all of it, as cool as it was, and the network platform we had, it all seemed a little too squeaky clean. It didn't seem like the Wild West anymore, and it seemed like everything is such a controlled, safe environment, and therefore you were missing that rough around the edges aspect of what drove people and gave it that gritty, I want to see what happens next, is I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen next feeling that we all had as a fan too, you know, and you missed that. And, you know, in large part, arguably, you know, Rob Black wasn't there, and he did bring a lot of that. And at the end of the day, you could say what you want about Rob. You don't have to like him. And matter of fact, here's a guy who just wouldn't even give a shit if you liked him or not, right? But he did definitely give all of us this opportunity that we wouldn't be without it. And I think in many aspects, like he doesn't, because of people that maybe, you know, choose not to like his personality, whatever. Because of that, I think it's an unfair criticism to where he doesn't really get the respect he deserves. As far as the mindset that he had, it's like I was telling Kevin, I would go into the offices on Wednesday nights to do the wraparounds, and it was like a science class, you know, the way the chalkboard was laid out of what was going to transpire just for that one television episode. So I remember thinking even back then, like, gosh, but it was kayfabe. We couldn't say it, but it was like at the same time, man, if people could only see what goes into this, you know, they appreciate it that much more.
You're right about that, about Rob Black not getting the credit. I mean, that's the mentality I have going into when I run a Santino Brothers show, about using homegrown talent, really taking, like, right, I always say it's easy to book all the biggest stars in the world and get them to come to your show, but to really emphasize on your homegrown talent and make them the stars. Like, I think that you're right. You're like, Rob Black doesn't get the credit that he deserves for doing that, because it would be so easy for him just to get all the ECW guys, but he stuck with his homegrown guys, and he was a master at that. He was a master to have the ability to do that, and to make everybody's character very make anybody really interested in everybody's character, you know, and that's the ability Rob Black had, and I thought that was, and I carry it on today about like really like whenever we run shows, like, just really emphasizes on using our local homegrown talent. You know what I mean? And I tell everybody, hey, this is just a school show, and maybe we'll have like 350 people there. And I'm like, yeah, this is just a school show because We're just using all of our students. You know what I mean? But the thinking behind it is the Rob Black thinking of just using our homegrown, you know?
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, he totally needs that credit for doing that.
Speaking of your homegrown talent, like before we take off here, first off, Joey, thank you again for doing this. It's been great, not only this interview, but just catching up with you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, yeah, man. You know, you're definitely continuing the hard work legacy, and you're doing that at your Santino Brothers school. Tell us a little bit about that, what you're doing, or what Santino Brothers really is all about, more information about it for anybody that's a fan or that's interested in getting involved, because it's one of the few places, not only on the West Coast, to do what you guys actually do.
Well, you know, Santino Brothers, right? It's my heart and soul. It's my passion to train these guys, and I get a lot of joy to just see the students come out, like to watch Jake Atlas on NXT every week, or to see Brody King winning championship after championship at Ring of Honor or New Japan Pro Wrestling, along with all the other students and everything that they're doing. You know, it gives me a lot of pride. Really to see them kind of like, you know, see these little young students kind of go on and live their life. But yeah, like we're wrestling school out here in Los Angeles, California. Right now, we're closed down due to COVID. But we're doing some online classes, right? We're doing everything we can do to keep the dream alive. You can check us out at santinobros.net. And it's a rigorous curriculum that we follow. We have a 12-month course that we teach you from the ground up, and teach you everything you need to know about professional wrestling. And I say everything you need to know, but I know, and you know, like there's no way I'm going to learn everything that there is to need to know in professional wrestling. You know what I mean? Because there's just so much. And that's what I love about it, is that there's so much about pro wrestling, and just the learning aspect. And when I tell everybody, like, hey, we don't even train you, like training to become a pro wrestler is what we do. But the main purpose and main goal of what we do, and it actually changed within the last year, is that we focus on changing people's lives. And like I say, like I tell people, I know that sounds corny and it sounds cheesy, but it's the truth. It's having the ability to have a parent come up to us with tears in their eyes and to tell us how much we have changed their son into a young man, a respectable young man, or just to see these people go from having no direction in their life to having all the direction in their life with pro wrestling. And not only that, but being able to, because these Santino Brother wrestlers are like sought after. And I always tell them, you guys are 20 times better than I ever was, because I was wrestling at the Nickelodeon when I was 2 years in front of 20 people. And you guys are like doing it. Like Brody King got to wrestle at Madison Square Garden probably 3 years into his wrestling career, you know? And, but I just get so much joy out of them and teaching them. And I found my knack in pro wrestling, like what I'm really good at. Like if you watch me wrestle and you think I'm a really good wrestler, whatever the case is, like it doesn't compare to the mentor, trainer, and motivator that I am at Santino Brothers. And it's like a 24-hour thing where it's not just teaching them, you know, the 2 to 3 hours that we're in class, but it's like shaping them up into being young adults, you know, really. And they're so, yeah, like they come in and they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and sometimes they look like grown-ass men. And I got to sit back and realize, like, they are young. They're 20 years old, and their brains are so impressionable. And, like, it's just a responsibility that I have, you know, to mold these young minds. Not just to be great wrestlers, but how to be respectable, stand-up human beings. And that's why I always say it's like we're in the business of changing your life. You know, if you go through our program, it's the vehicle is pro wrestling, but the goal is to change your life and to be a more respectable human being, being whether it be an entrepreneur or learning about professional wrestling and how you can transfer that into your life and how you can utilize that. And I think that's totally what we do. And like I say, hey, I tell everybody it sounds corny, but having the ability to do that with Santino Brothers has brought a lot of joy to my life and Sylvia's life, my wife, and just, you know, I couldn't imagine us really doing anything else.
Wow, that's awesome, Joey. And you know, a lot of great things that I've experienced at your school. Just keep up the great work, man. Hopefully we'll all be out of this sooner than later and you know, getting back into gear here. But once again, my friend, great catching up with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well and things are going well. And man, thank you for sharing all your stories, your extreme memories of XPW. You know, it's crazy to think that in many ways we kind of scratched the surface. There's so much to talk about. Maybe we'll have you on again in the future if you're interested. And
yeah, I'd love it.
All right, man. Well, for all of us here for Xtreme Memories exclusively on the Wrestling Chatter channel, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Give us a comment what you really think about it, and subscribe and share this video with as many people as you can. And give us some more feedback. Hopefully we answered a lot of these questions. We kind of tried to infuse them into the things that I asked you. So we did have a lot of questions through our Twitter page. And like I said, hopefully we answer them. This is Kris Kloss for Joey Muñoz /Chaos /The Rock Superstar /Kid Chaos / member of the Enterprise, Santino Brothers. It's been a great interview. Thank you so much for doing this once again, Joey. And we'll hopefully see you in the near future for the Wrestling Chatter channel. My name is Kris Kloss for Xtreme Memories, and we will see you folks next time. Out.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Xtreme Memories, hosted by Kris Kloss. He's dropping new episodes every month on the 15th and 30th. You can be the first to tune in by subscribing to the Wrestling Chatter channel right here on YouTube. See you next time.